Brother Jabari open up, being that he's the one that called out and challenged Vocab Malone to come on through. So I'm gonna let you start off the conversation, Brother Jabari. It's on you, brother.
Well, let me describe it this way. I think the reason why I wanted to speak to Vocab is You know what? I'm going to share my screen. Instead of explaining it, let me show the family what I'm referring to. Vocab actually had a discussion with another apologist, M.J. Jackson, who I think is an assistant pastor and founded the Urban Christian Institute. And I was really a little frustrated, and I'll even show you some of the discussions we had in the chat. Actually, I was a little frustrated because the show that he did in January of 2019 was Kemet, What Christians Need to Know About a Strange New Religion. What Christians need to know about a strange new religion. Not only is that title extremely problematic, not only is that title the kind of title that you know that would irk and draw the ire of many people, whether they're in the Kemetic tradition or not, but in addition to that, he didn't even have a person in the Kemetic tradition to talk about it. And so I was upset, frustrated. I thought that it was unfair. I thought that it was a little bizarre to me. And so I told them that in the chat, right? We had some conversations back and forth. It seemed pretty clear there that they did not want for me to come on to talk about the Christian tradition. And so that's sort of where my interest in trying to speak to particularly Vocab, but also Adam as well, started. Because you'll even see that in the chat, if you both remember, I was talking to both of you in the chat like, what is this? This makes no sense. This makes no sense. I fundamentally have to say to you, family, you don't get to destroy a house and then tell somebody that they're homeless. To call the Kemetic tradition new is absolutely ridiculous. And let me be blunt, asinine. It's the oldest spiritual tradition that any of you have heard of, including the two apologetics on this interesting conversation. So I have no idea how they thought that was an appropriate way to describe the situation. Now, Adam was not part of the conversation, but Adam was a defender in the chat. Let's call it that. That was the first time that I had spoken to him and really felt that they were doing the tradition a disservice. And I want to say to you also, I'll say this and then I'll close. I truly have, I don't have anything negative to say about Vocab Malone. As we've spoken, he's been completely respectful and articulate, but I do think that it's also extremely rich for someone who is of European descent to question the validity of Africans deciding their own traditions. And so once again, you don't get to destroy a house and then say that someone is homeless. You just don't get to do that. And so I think that this is something that we could really have some pointed conversation over, some interesting conversation over. They already know that I will continue to assert, based on the evidence, that the Christian tradition is an echo of the Kemetic tradition, a poor echo, but an echo of the Kemetic tradition. And so I want them to just get it in and explain their positions on this as well.
Well, we got to be careful, Brother Jabari, because you already know there's a silent killer in the building. His name is Adams. You already see that the Dagger Squad, Garfield already said Adams is a beast. So right there, we got to be careful, brother. You don't know much about this brother Adams, so be careful.
Well,
anybody else want to respond to what Jabari was saying? Either one of y'all.
I mean, I'll gladly jump in. Vocab, you want to, what you want to do, brother?
I'll say something briefly, and then what I'm going to do is temporarily hang up and call back on my better webcam. But I didn't want to have Adam. Adam shouldn't have to defend my title. So that was my title. And the reason why, Jabari, that title, there's two reasons. One is YouTube. And so that makes people go, huh? But I wouldn't want anything in the title to not be true. And that's where the disagreement will come in. And here's the disagreement. From what I see from people who practice Kemet in 2021, I don't see the faithful line of continuation with Kemet from the ancient past in a way that I think legitimately says this is that. Not only that, the idea of Kemetic spirituality is almost problematic in and of itself because it's really Kemetic spiritualities. I'm not sure which one would be the right or official one. And I'm not sure if Jabari could really say which one is the right or official one, because Jabari likes to say things like, well, you can't take it literal, ladies and gentlemen. And so I'm wondering, what's the real truth claim behind Jabari's tradition? Because if it's mere tradition, have at it, but don't tell anybody else it's true. Just say it's your preference, like you like chocolate or vanilla. Now, lastly, if Jabari thinks I am not allowed to bring any kind of critical analysis on Kemet, I hear that opinion. But I wonder if he feels okay critiquing Odinism. I wonder if Jabari feels that he would be allowed to critique people who worship Thor and things like that. Or if he thinks he has to respect the Druids, for example, as legitimate spiritual heirs, that he can't say anything about them because that's a European tradition. And how dare he criticize a European tradition because he's out of European descent? I think those arguments are problematic. And here's why, and then I'll hand it over to my brother, and I'll call you guys in on a better phone. Truth is truth. And if there's truth with the capital T, maybe we might say it that way, using a colloquialism, then it's transcultural. And I'm not saying that we just wade into any waters without having any understanding. I understand we need to show respect in those things. But truth is truth. And if it's true, then it's true transcendently. And that means it's transcultural. And that means, Jabari, I would love for you to critique those Druids. Jabari, I would love for you to critique Odinism. And I may just critique Kemet a little bit. I'm going to call back you guys on a better phone in just a second here.
All right.
All right. So, yeah, I mean.
Hey, Adam, you might have to hold up because the reason is two of y'all. So I will have to let Jabari respond to that. And then you come in and then he can respond to you. So, Brother Jabari.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
I think that his logic is laughable. Particularly, I would wish he was here to hear this.
So you want to let Adam go? You want to let Adam go, and then by the time he comes
on, because the family needs to really see how ridiculous this is. Once again, you don't get to destroy someone's home and then pillory them, insult them as homeless. Vocab Malone's people destroyed African traditions. And then absolutely open his mouth and say it's transcultural. You should be able to critique anything. Is he not self-aware? Does he not realize who he is and where he comes from? I mean, that's a really bizarre thing to say. Now, I would say it would be ridiculous if Adam said it, but it is absolutely ridiculous for Vocab to say it. A person of European descent saying, well, you should be able to critique anything. The reality is, it is Europeans that destroyed African traditions. It is Europeans that forced Africans into the hulls of ships. It is European that forced Africans into Christianity. You have no ground to stand on here with your critique. And I honestly have to say, I believe that's the reason why he asked dear brother Adam on here, because this conversation was supposed to be about me and Vocab. And so he asked Adam to come in so he could pour a little coffee into the milk. And that's kind of crazy. Adam, you know that's funny too. Come on, brother.
It's funny, but it's false. The reason why I'm here is because I got the reason why I'm here is because I got bars and I'm ready to go at any time. So that's the reason why they called me.
You could have bars,
so yeah.
But this conversation was supposed to be Jabari and Vocab. And so, and we could certainly, I have wanted to talk to you. It's not that I don't want to talk to you. I told you I want to talk to you. I said it in the chat 2 years ago.
Right.
But I'm saying that in this instance where Sanetter, Jabari, and Vocab were on the phone and agreed to have a discussion on Tuesday, he didn't say, oh, I'd love to come, but I'm going to bring Adam. He said that later. And I think that it was a strategic ploy, an interesting strategic ploy, but perhaps a duller opponent wouldn't be able to see the strategy. The ball is under the shells, and I see the ball the entire time. The reality is, Vocab Malone does not have any moral ground to make these critiques. And so this is not about Jabari critiquing Odinism. This is not about Jabari critiquing Druidism. This is about someone of European descent critiquing Africans who have decided for themselves once again that they must return to African traditions after Europeans forced them out of those traditions through the pain of the whip and through the whole of the chain. And so that is what we're talking about here.
Okay, I respond to that.
Yes, go ahead, brother.
Right. So if that's what we're talking about here, and I say this with all due respect, first of all, let me backtrack. First of all, Jabari, I have the utmost respect for you as a person. I'm gonna be honest with you. I believe that you believe what you're saying. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're not like a huckster or something like that. So I can appreciate the fact that you truly are here representing what you believe. So let me say that at the outset. But if what you just stated is what we're about here, then you've already gotten off to the wrong foot. You know what I'm saying? Here's why. If it's all about going back to the traditions of our ancestors, here's the thing. You can have a full description of what your ancestors believe, right? And you would know what they believe. But that wouldn't answer the question in terms of whether or not what they believe was true, right? So here's the issue. I'm saying just because your ancestors believed it, that doesn't mean we have to shut our brains off and no longer think for ourselves and investigate the claims of our ancestors. That's what standing on the shoulders of giants looks like. So here's the thing. When it comes to mathematics, somebody can say 2 + 2 is 5. I don't care what culture you come from. That's a false statement, right? And likewise, if there's something true about the world, independent of what I think about it, independent of what Jabari thinks about it, independent of what anybody thinks about it, if there's something true about the world, then we want to investigate whether the worldview aligns with that truth or not. And anybody can assess that. That's not a matter of, everything is not about, downing somebody's culture. I'm getting an echo from somebody. I don't know if somebody can, mute their mic or something like that.
Yeah, that was Vocab, Mike. That was Vocab.
Okay, cool. So I want to add to that and say this, though. Here's the thing. I know banging on the Bible is par for the course when it comes to the Sun of the TV, and I don't even say that disrespectfully. I appreciate the fact that I'm in the room. I know how y'all get down.
I got respect for you.
Garfield
sanctioned you. Garfield said you was a beast. So, brother, I'm gonna be calling you to see if I can get you in the ring with some of these Hebrews, bro.
Oh, without question,
Yes, sir.
With that being said, when it comes to Jabari, one thing is I'm accustomed to seeing you take jabs at other people's worldviews, but not necessarily defending your own. So what I'm interested in is to hear what is your worldview? What do you subscribe to? And what is the evidence or arguments that support whether or not your worldview is true? I'm all about truth. I'm not really concerned about, so-and-so believe this, so-and-so believe that. I want evidence or argumentation. That's really what we need to get around to. We can sit around bash the Bible all day. Your viewers have already seen that. But what I'm interested in is, what is your worldview? What do you subscribe to? And whether or not it aligns with reality. Do you have evidence or arguments to support that? That's where I'm coming from.
Synopsis. Brother Adam says African traditions are false, European traditions are true.
That's not what I said.
Let's just be really clear.
That's not what I said.
I said that very articulately.
That's not what I said. Come on, man. Come on now. That's not what I said.
If you are astute enough to hear what he said, I want you to hit the 7 on your keyboard, because I heard it, and I know you're astute enough to hear it.
You heard it wrong. That's not what I said. I can repeat to you what I said if you like. I can repeat.
You gotta let him talk now.
He misrepresented me, but okay, go ahead.
He's made it sound like this is a situation about truth. as if there is a way to justify, a way to prove the Christian tradition in terms of mathematics. There have been people digging in the sand for hundreds of years and have not come up with nary a bone. Yet he wants to sit here and talk about truth. And it's so amazing that he is going to juxtapose Christian truth versus African truths. If that is the strongest argument you have at the outset, this is going to be a short night.
Well, I haven't made an argument yet, but I notice I never refers to you as the Floyd Mayweather of the conscious community, and I see you ducking and dodging already. But and that's fine.
This is not supposed to be this part is not supposed to be a dialogue. This is supposed to be responding to you. Okay.
Oh, it's not okay. Fair
and
enough.
So I want to be really clear that you just said that this is it doesn't matter what tradition it is. This is about truth. And Absolutely. If your ancestors were true, then you want to hear it. But you've already said, because you are a Christian apologist, that you are saying that the Christian tradition is true. That is what you have in fact said. And so I would love to hear how you can defend that. And I am absolutely comfortable, prepared to describe the tradition of ancient Kemet. I attempted to do that in 2019 when Vocab had that ridiculous conversation. Let me show you. You know how they say, let me go to the videotape?
Well, sure.
Let's show you the screenshot. So this is not a situation where Jabari doesn't want to defend the tradition. This is not a situation where, and Sonetter's not in, so he can't share my screen. This is not a situation where, Sonetter, can you share this screen? Okay, thank you. Take a look at this. I would like to challenge Brother Vocab Malone's and MJ Jackson to be more respectful of the Kemetic community and speak about us and not about us. If you want to understand our tradition, you should reach out. You even mentioned me by name. I'm accessible if you would like to correct this imbalance. I have been trying to talk about our traditions in a way that is much more open, a way that is much more honest, for over 2 years with you. And to be fair, because some of you might not realize that this conversation also includes our dear brother Adam here, but Adam came to Vocab and MJ Jackson's defense. Sure. And so I want you to see, and I'm going to share this screen. So this is not, he says he hasn't heard me do it. He hasn't heard me do it because he hasn't wanted me to do it. That's the reality. I'm going to share it again because it looks like it's flickering. Listen, interesting. Why not speak with practitioners of Kemetic spirituality? Jackson understands very little about our traditions. And you'll see on the bottom here, tru-id Apologetics then jumps in to try to defend this imbalance that they created on that show. So let's be really clear. This is not a situation where Jabari is not willing. This is not a situation where Jabari is not able to defend, to describe the traditions of ancient Africa. This is a situation where we first have to acknowledge the ludicrousness of what you both did, and then we can talk about this. Because honestly, the reason why you're here is because of that. And I said it to you in the chat, you could see it. I said it to you again when I saw you in Philadelphia at the Vince Bantu debate. You can attest to that. So let us be very clear that, one, I'm going to question Vocab Malone's moral standing on this ground, to critique Kemetic tradition, to describe the Kemetic tradition as new and strange. You do not get to destroy someone's home and then call them homeless. And I also want to challenge and in fact chastise our dear brother Adam for suggesting that the African traditions are false and the European tradition of Christianity is where truth exists. Both of you are in really hot water. And I didn't put you there, your own words did. So please respond.
Sure. Jabari, I want to go to your website. I look at your DVDs. I see one called The African Origins of Christianity.
Yep.
Could you tell me about the Christian scholar present as you gave that presentation? What was his name or her name, maybe?
Do you want me to talk right now?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I want you to be really clear that I have a master's degree in divinity. I have studied the Christian tradition for as long as I have studied the Kemetic tradition.
What was his name again? I got my pen right here.
My contestment here is that you're talking about something that you don't know about.
Oh, so you don't have to have a practitioner present as long as you think you know what you're talking about.
I'd like to answer.
You went on a long while.
And I also want you to be really clear that I am asking about your moral standing as a Tamhu, as a European, to say that the traditions that your people destroyed and undermined are now new and strange.
Thank you for asking me, but I want to make it clear that I'm also asking you questions. What was the Christian scholar? What was the Christian scholar's name present when you gave your presentation on Christianity?
Jabari Osaze.
So there was no Christian scholar. There wasn't a Christian or a scholar. Oh.
Well, let's be very clear. Jabari spent a large section of his life as a Christian, and Jabari has both written and studied Christianity extensively. Something you cannot say about your understanding of the Kemetic tradition.
So Jabari, just want to make clear that one of your critiques you don't hold yourself to. I just want everyone to see that, Jabari. So you say you have to have a practitioner present to discuss the tradition, and yet you feel fine to discuss the tradition without a practitioner present. So I'm not sure why we are required to do something you don't require of yourself. Is that what your Kemetic morality gets you, Jabari?
Is that a question?
Yes, it is.
Okay. My contention is not that you cannot critique it without a practitioner present.
Okay.
That's really slight. I like how you did that. But
you did say that. Why not have a practitioner present? You did say that, sir.
You have to understand that I am astute enough to see what you just tried to do.
You did say practitioner.
How can you talk about the Kemetic tradition when you know very little about it? That is what I said. And you can actually, are you saying that you are schooled, that you are familiar enough about the Kemetic tradition in order to introduce your audience to a new and strange religion?
The basics,
we're saying.
I'm a student of it, but the basics, yes. But also notice I had someone on with me who I view as very well versed in the subject. He's like a bibliophile in the area. And if you notice, he gave nonstop books, and most of the books he gave for people to read were by practitioners.
Terrible. That's not true.
A lot of the books he gave were by practitioners. He said, here's Jackson's book, for example. Here's this book. He actually said, here's their book, and he would mention it. So it's not, he didn't just give a one side, right? So I just want to bring that out. But here's the question I have for you about your question to me, which I hear. And here's what I want to know. Jabari, upon your Kemetic worldview, how does one gain, obtain, properly have, whatever term you want to use there, moral authority? You're saying you don't have moral authority to XYZ. From your worldview, drawing from the gods and goddesses, what gives one moral authority or not? From Kemet, don't borrow from the Christian worldview. From your worldview, Jabari, what gives one moral authority? Is it to be of the same ethnicity? Or is it something different? And I want to hear from your tradition the answer, please.
Is that a question?
Yes, sir.
Okay, because I don't want someone to say I'm interrupting you.
No, you're not. You're good.
Okay, so I want to be really clear that I'm answering your question. I want to absolutely explain to you, because it seems like you're pretending like you don't understand what I'm saying, when I know you do. In fact, I could play the tape that explains that you understand what I'm saying. The Kemetic tradition was undermined and, in fact, destroyed by Christianity. In fact, by Europeans. And most people of African descent are absolutely Christians today because they were given the cross with their chains.
Uh-oh.
And so I am saying that this falls under the Kemetic law of reciprocity. How about I will not critique your tradition if we're able to put you in chains. You could critique all you want. So you could go into the chains, and then I'll say that I won't critique you.
Well, if you're in the Kemetic tradition, y'all be loving to put people in chains. So y'all done put everybody in chains.
Is that
so you can't criticize the Hebrews. You can't criticize the Nubians. You can't criticize those vile, wretched Cush that y'all love to talk about. You can't criticize hardly anybody because you done put everybody in chains, bro.
Hey, can I jump in here right quick? Can I jump in here right quick? Because this is about worldview. So I want to get some clarity because I don't want to misrepresent your position. So I was at the debate, there in Philly, as you know, I'm saying, and there was a very interesting question that was asked right at the end by my guy, Wilt Sorrell. Shout out to him. He asked you about like what your perspective is on God, the Most High, what have you. And I'm not sure if you recall, but as you were giving your answer, you started talking about how there's really no differentiation between you and say like the table next to you, and like everything is one, that sort of a thing. That's what you said. Is that? Do you remember saying that?
I think that you might have misunderstood part of what I said. I did say that what you are attempting to do in the Kemetic tradition is absolutely live into your divinity, and that all things are spirit. I didn't say that I am the same as the table. That's not what I said.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. Just everything. There's the one. Everything is part of the one.
Everything comes from the source.
Everything comes from the source.
From the source. Yes.
Okay. So I'm sorry. And we say comes from the source. Like, would you say that everything is the source, or is it an expression of the source? Is that kind of what you're saying, or
that would be the same thing? There's no difference in those two questions you just asked.
Okay, so so I can use those synonymously. So everything is an expression of the source or an emanation of the source. All right, now if that's true, let's use some logic here.
Yeah.
When Vocab Malone, as a European, is critiquing the African spirituality, according to your worldview, he's an expression of the source. And so really,
wow,
this is what logic does. This is where logic breaks down. I went think it through. If everything is part of the one, an expression of the one, then Vocab Malone expressing critique of the African spirituality that you hold to or whatever, that's the one talking, right? Anybody who destroyed African religions, according to you, African spirituality, those Europeans who did that are expressions of the one. No matter what evil you want to pin on Christianity, at the end of the day, the one who occupies the most high spot in your worldview is the real culprit. So when it comes to between Kemet and Christianity, why in the world would I subscribe to a worldview where every single evil thing that's been perpetrated against my people is directly attributed to the one who occupies the most high spot in your theology? That would be my question. This is what logic does, man. I'm just being real. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm just trying to really think it through. You're muted.
You say a lot of interesting things. I'm going to give the family some bullet points of what you just said. Vocab Malone, the European in here, is God.
That's not what I said.
That's it.
You can't get bullet points. No. See, that's
Adam. You gotta let him go.
You can't misrepresent me though.
Hold on, time out, y'all. Time out. Everybody on black ice. Nobody can hear nobody. Jabari, nobody can hear you. You got to let the person speak. Even if you feel he misrepresented you, you will get your chance to let them know that. Go ahead, Jabari.
I want to be really clear that you are trying to say that because all things are one, the things that we have done for the last tens of thousands of years are irrelevant. I certainly did not say that. I said that what we need to do is cultivate ourselves so we can realize our divinity. That is what I said. And for you to make it sound like all things are all things, that is not what I said. That is you've created the slippery slope argument. I did not say that. And I also want to say I find it very interesting that you are defending the Europeans' ability to critique African people as they go back to the tradition. That's why he's asked you here. And that's why you jumped into the chat in our discussion. This is really slick. But I want you to know that the folks that are in this chat are astute enough to see it. So maybe in some other audiences, they would be confused. But in actuality, dear brother, you need to go back to the books and take a really clear-eyed look at what you're doing here. I'm going to say what I've said again. You do not get to destroy someone's home and then call them homeless. You do not get to destroy someone's home and then call them homeless. You don't get to be of the people who destroyed African traditions, enslaved people, and then say, look, they're doing something new. Those traditions were destroyed by Europeans. And then you bring on someone who is not part of that tradition, and then he says, well, everything is everything. If we're all one, then he can critique as much as he likes. This is really, really bizarre. This is really bizarre. And I want to say to you that this is a really, really poor showing. Now, if you'd like for me, and there was a real question in what Vocab said in the beginning. He wanted to talk about spirituality versus spiritualities. I'd love to get to talk about that. I'm not going to do it yet. But there is a real description of the Kemetic worldview, a real issue, a question about the Kemetic worldview that I think that we should attempt to answer. But before we do that, I just want to reiterate the fact that the Kemetic tradition is ancient. We utilize ancient texts that were written before anyone had ever said the name Jesus, Yeshua. This is an ancient tradition. And there are sections of those Kemetic texts that are in the book that you call the Bible. And so I want you to recognize that this is a situation where one tradition long predates the other, and the newer tradition sought to destroy the older tradition. And then, centuries later, those people who are of the stock of the people, by the way, I want to, Sonetta, if you can share this image really quickly, because when I say destroyed, sometimes people don't always get it. Here's a temple of Philae. Here's a temple of Philae. Can you see the cross carved very deeply and how each of the images of the divine have been chiseled, have been desecrated? Can you see that? When I say that Christians attempted to destroy the Kemetic tradition, here's another one. There's another one. How about this desecration? I'm going to tell you that we could do this all day long. But before I do any more, I want to jump us forward, because I've also said that we got those traditions in our chains. This is an image of Elmina Dungeon. This is the place where Africans, West Africans, actually were taken to their doom in the West. And if you had visited like I have, when you get into the dungeon, I want to just show you what you see. Okay, where did my folder go? I want to show you what you see. Give me 1 second.
While he said 1 second, I want you to know, Adam and Vocab, if y'all wish to share anything, y'all have the option to do that as well.
Yeah, I'm assuming that they.
Okay, cool.
That you would let them.
I'm gonna get a chance to respond to him from earlier, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You haven't responded? You can respond. I would hope you would respond.
Oh yeah, I definitely would like to. If I could just get a second while you're looking for that, I'll make it quick.
Well, no, I want to show this because it's here.
Okay.
It's here, and if we disconnect it, it might be harder for us to understand the entire story. In the middle of the dungeon, what are you seeing here?
People, man.
Yeah.
You see people. You see that structure in the middle of the dungeon? In fact, this is above the place where men were held, and directly across from the place where recalcitrant Africans who continued to fight, would be put in this place with the skull and crossbones. They would be left there to starve to death. But right across from there, what do you see? Do you know what that building is? Do you?
What the hell?
Let me close up on it.
Hey, so now, do we get sound effects too, man? I like that's kind of dope, man. Do we get some of those? I'm just saying,
Yes, sir. You
Okay.
get that too.
Okay.
That is.
You got to come with a powerful point. You get
Fair
it.
enough.
Wait. I don't want him to talk over my point here. That's the church. We were given that cross while we had chains on. I want us to not miss the historical reality that we're dealing with. And so that is why I am questioning. Vocab, you didn't do that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying just understand who you are in the world and just say, you know what? How about I just let them do what they do? You know what I mean? You didn't do that. I'm not blaming this on you. I'm just saying you have to be self-aware enough to know that there's some conversations you just don't get in on. And Brother Adam, for you to come to be his defender, I mean, you have lost virtually all of your credibility.
All right, I think
so that's what's called
dialogue, but it looks like maybe Adam and you and I can go for about 5 minutes now.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
One thing I would wish you wouldn't do, Jabari.
You're complaining about time. There are two of you against me.
Yeah, but how does that change time? Only one person speaks at once. That doesn't change anything. Jabari,
about sides.
What I'm saying is a dialogue, you know.
And one on the other.
All right. What I wish wasn't happening is the cheap trick of false narrative. You keep on, this is a poor showing, family. Let me tell you what's happening. Jabari, just because you suggest it to the audience does not mean they're foolish enough to believe your created narrative. Why not just talk about what we're talking about instead of all this? Who are you, John Madden now? All this color commentary about the result. Just speak to us, brother. Just speak to us one-on-one. I'm tired of that. Now, if you want to do that the whole time, that's fine if you want to waste your time, but we all see what it is. It's narrative creation where you've lost your credit. Adam hasn't lost credibility because Jabari said so. Right. You're the one waving staffs over people's head like it gives them magical power. Like He-Man, we pulls out a sword and goes from Adam to He-Man, bro. Like, come on, now.
But you know what? Now, hey, seriously though, and I don't mean to cut you off, but real talk though, man. One of the main strategies used on the plantation was trying to have black men undermine black men. Now, I'm saying you haven't asked me why I'm here. You haven't ask me what my motivations are, but you've already imposed upon me the motivation as to why I'm here. And what I'm saying is, and I don't mean no disrespect to you, but that's the same kind of thing that they used to do, employ individuals like what you're doing. They would employ you against people like myself to try to undermine the truth. So what I'm asking you to do don't impose upon me motivations. You should ask me why I'm here, give me an opportunity to share with you, and then you can critique that. I'm saying, but black man to black man, let's not play into that game. You know what I'm saying? Now, with that being said, I'm gonna just make it real. I like those sound effects. That's dope. I gotta do that on my show. Real quick. I understand that you're working with one person, so I'm not gonna speak as long, so we won't tag team me and take too much time. But I want to respond to something you said. First of all, I thought it was interesting that you showed those pictures of the crosses and stuff like that, over the Kemetic temples and whatnot. I thought that was very interesting that you showed those, but what you didn't show was, examples like, for example, like with Akhenaten, how they, the later generations destroyed some of his stuff because he had committed himself to a certain form of monotheism that didn't jive with the tradition at the time. Oh no, don't shake your head. You can come back and prove me wrong. But the bottom line is, when they came back later on, they destroyed some of his stuff. Or we could talk about iconoclasm. People can look that word up. Iconoclasm in ancient Kemet, for example, you would have grave robbers who would go into the tomb of somebody they didn't like and chop off the nose of their statue or image to signify them not being able to live on in the afterlife. So that's iconoclasm too. Or when you had other people, of the Kemetic tradition who would change their beliefs. Because again, Kemetic, you would agree, has a long history. So beliefs change at different points of time, and they would go back and redact or change or mar old statues and so on and so forth, according to the values and ideas of that time. So when it comes to pinning all this on Christians, as if we're the only ones riding around destroying statues, that's about the most Kemetic thing in the world, is to destroy statues for belief systems that you don't agree with. That's called iconoclasm. Second, when it comes, I'm talking fast because I'm trying to be respectful of your time. Again, instead of putting motivations on me, allow me to explain to you why I'm here. All I care about, number one, I'll be explicit. I am a Christian. And I do believe that it's true. And I do want to take every opportunity to share my beliefs. That's where I'm coming from. With that being said, I believe that our people, I love my community. And I believe that we can't build a strong community on a foundation of weak ideas. Therefore, anytime somebody is putting something out there that I believe to be false teaching, regardless of what color they are, I'm going to be on it. That's just how it is. Now, with that being said, I did not say that Vocab alone is God, that you misrepresented me there. I did not say that somehow, all of our African traditions are false. I actually don't believe that. You know what I'm saying? In every sense of the word, you really were just like, you lack nuance on that point. And I kind of don't appreciate it, but I'm gonna let it slide because I understand there's games that should involve. It's a chess match. I understand that. But I want to leave you with this before I move on to the next point. The reason why I'm here is because I'm concerned about worldviews. Now, I've been using that word a lot. Worldviews is just a lens through which you see the world. It's like a big puzzle. If you put all the pieces together, that what you believe about the world, that's your worldview, if you will. And what I'm saying is certain times, different pieces of a worldview clash with one another in such a way that it gives us a red flag that there's something wrong with that worldview. Therefore, when I go to your worldview and I ask you questions about what you believe about the one, everything is one. What I'm saying is your concept of oneness when it comes to that being or whatever clashes with morality in the sense that if you believe what you believe, then it leads to some really heinous moral conclusions, such as if everything is of the one, if everything is an expression of the one, then the slave masters that were beating and enslaving our ancestors and raping our women and going over there and colonizing, all of them were expressions of the one that you subscribe to. So what I'm saying is no matter what evil you want to call out, whether it be slave masters, the people who built the church in the slave, whatever, I don't make any excuses for anybody who claimed to be a Christian and did anything like that. Then people will probably bust hell wide open for all I know. And that's fine. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, if I'm going to take on your worldview, I'm jumping out of the frying pan into the fire, because at the end of the day, the one in your theology, if we follow it to its logical conclusions, we have to say that the one is responsible for all the evils that you're talking about. Lastly, it's not true that all of our ancestors came into Christianity as a result of the bullwhip. I have a book right here in my hand called The Corpus of Early Arabic Sources for West African History. And on page 250, we have an excerpt from a letter in which Mansa Musa attests to there being Christians in his kingdom of Mali going back to the 1300s. Again, that's Corpus of Early Arabic Sources for West African History. That's at least a century before any European set foot in West Africa, snatched up anybody for slavery. So there were Christians in West Africa. There we go. There were Christians in West Africa prior to the transatlantic slave trade by the attestation of Mansa Musa. We all know who he is, King of Mali. And so you can't say that, we just came into this because of change. That's not true. And I think it's a shame that you're misrepresenting your Christian West African ancestors like that. And we need to honor their heritage just like you would any other tradition.
Now, could I share my screen a little bit?
No, you spoke, he spoke, now I speak.
I didn't share my screen. Well, I wasn't asking you, Jabari. I was asking Sonetta.
He spoke, now I speak.
Sonetta, could I share my screen a little bit?
You spoke, he spoke, now I speak. I mean,
vocab. Jabari have to respond to what he said first.
I mean, come on.
Well, the brother went for a while, but all right.
Well, both of you are speaking. Now listen, let's be clear.
Vocab, if you would have came on by yourself, y'all could have been.
You did this. I didn't do this.
I'll fall back on the next one. I'll let him get the next one.
No, I'm fine with it. Just yes or no is cool. The drama is so much drama.
I'm a child of the 70s. We used to call this a handicap match where there was one big wrestler and two little small wrestlers. Guess who the two little small wrestlers are? So let me just say this to you. That's a joke. You're supposed to at least laugh. Bro.
That's funny. That's cool. Yeah.
You're supposed to at least laugh. It's a jab, but it's a joke. Come on.
It's fine. That's good. That's good. That's good.
I want to say that when you attempt to equate rulers appropriating things within a culture with the wholesale destruction of a civilization, we are not talking about the same thing. He tried to say that people destroying Akhenatans. And by the way, I don't believe that Akhenaten was practicing monotheism, but that's a whole other conversation we should have. And it might be one you find interesting, right? Okay. So we should talk about that, right? But definitely, I think that in actuality, when you look at things that happen inside of groups, particularly when you then look at how Western civilization became the dominant civilization, became the enslaver, became the colonizer around the world, you have to draw a straight line from what occurred in Africa. And I want to also say, by the way, you said you believe in the truth versus false teaching. And you've already said that you haven't heard me explain much, so I guess you've already assumed that what I'm saying is false teaching. But anyway,
Right.
I'm gonna let you go on that. And I also think that you said I should not tell people why you're here. I waited for you to actually explain why you were there. I wasn't actually explaining why you were here. I was explaining why Vocab brought you. But then after you opened your mouth and I said, brother, come on now. Is that what you really said? So that's when you got some heat from me. And if you continue to make ridiculous comments, you're going to continue to get heat from me.
Bring it. Okay, cool.
And I also want, you've said that I have said that the everything is one. But you are omitting the second part of what I said, conveniently. What I have said is our spiritual tradition is about honing yourself so you can return to your divinity. And I hope you understand that suggests that there has been a fall from divinity, that there is a separation from who we are. And so I want you to, and MJ Jackson is in there too. See, he was the one that he called. Anyway, listen, man. So that's exactly, I'm not saying that the slave masters are God, so what they did is fine, and that all things are one. By that rationale, then we should assume that you and your Christian tradition also believe that all things are one, because Satan was in fact created by your God. So are you saying that if I say something that sounds like all things are one, that's ridiculous? But then all of a sudden, in your tradition, when the chief cook and bottle washer of evil is a creation of God, then essentially there's a very similar concept. You know why it's so similar? Because you got it from Kemet. That's why it's so similar.
No, sir.
You fail to understand it. We are all attempting as people of spirit to assist people in reaching their higher selves. The way that I describe reaching their higher selves might be different than your description of reaching your higher self. But I want you to understand that I am not saying that because all things have to return to the source. I'm not saying that anything anyone does means that it's all divine. That would be ridiculous. Then what moral tradition would say that? That would mean that anything you do,
I agree. It would be ridiculous. I agree.
Pedophilia, it's all divine. That is not what I said. You're only using the first part of what I said very strategically. And I think everyone heard what I said here. So that's really, really cute.
Come on, Jabari. Now
I do want to say this. Now you mentioned that Mansa Musa describes Christians in his tradition, right?
In his nation, in the nation of Mali,
in his nation.
Right.
Yes, I'll say that. What period did you say that happened in again?
So again, it's the corpus of I'm just giving the source in case anybody wanted to know.
Go ahead. That's good.
Corpus of early Arabic sources, for West African history, page 250, and I'm saying it's dated within in the year 13. I mean, obviously it's an estimate, but 1324 is what we're talking about.
Question.
1324.
Would you agree that Egypt or Kemet is on the continent of Africa?
I mean, in East Africa, yeah, but I'm talking about West Africa.
If it's on the continent, what period do you think that these kinds of desecrations by early Christians occurred? Do you have any recollection, understanding?
Yeah, I mean, I do, but I don't see how that relates to my point, though.
Well, I think that you're saying that if you find Christians in West Africa in the 13th century, then that must be because the traditions of Christianity actually were just sort of indigenous to Africans. But I'm attesting to you that Christianity made its inroads in Africa far earlier. I don't think it should be so surprising that we see Christians in Mali. I mean, let's be clear. Movement occurs. The same person that you are describing as citing Christians in his realm traveled all the way to the same region where these desecrations I am referring to are. Let's not pretend that there was no movement between Northeast Africa and West Africa. The same person you are mentioning traveled there himself. And so simply saying that there were Christians in West Africa, by the way, I think that if you read the quote, you'll recognize it must have been a very small number of people.
It's irrelevant.
saying, no, I think it is relevant, but I think that as you look at this, you should recognize that this form of this spiritual tradition that we're talking about actually attempted to desecrate Africa much, much earlier. And so simply saying that you can see some of them several hundred years later in another part of Africa.
All right, well, here's the problem, and I would invite.
No, hold on, Adam. I got to bring on vocab.
I thought he was asking me a question because he misrepresented me, but I thought he was asking me a question. Yeah.
All right,
my bad.
Brother vocab is on you, man. Let's go.
Yeah, he did. We're gonna have to get used to Jabari misrepresenting us in this. We just got to chill. All right, I want to show Jabari something.
Yeah.
I want to show Jabari something about iconoclasm because he's making quite a big deal about it today, and it's interesting because Adam pointed out sounds really Egyptian, and it certainly was. And are you able to see my screen? Anybody?
Not yet. It ain't come up yet.
No, not seeing my screen. Okay, let's see here. Share screen. All right, I got it. No, still not working. Okay, let me try one other thing here. Because I do need to share this screen, and I'm going to tell you what I'm talking about here. The Kummer Museum, is that how you say it, Jabari? Because it's right there at the Brooklyn Museum of Art. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about there?
Which museum?
Cummer is the name of it here. I'm gonna show.
You shared your screen before, vocab. You should know how to do it.
Yeah, I should be able to, because I want to show him something at that place here. All right, is it doing it? Are you able to see it? No. Okay.
No, not yet. It ain't pop up yet.
This is that's not cool. Okay, let me.
Can I show you where the share is? If you don't, do you know where the share is?
No, I do. It's saying I don't have permission to share. I'm trying to figure out why it's saying that. It's saying I don't have permission to share is what it's doing. I don't know why it's doing. I think it wants me to be on Chrome.
Yeah,
instead.
You got to be on that. I think that's it.
Because I'm on Brave. I'm on a different browser.
Yeah, you got to go on Chrome.
Oh, I am so sorry, guys. Okay, I need to go on Chrome. It appears instead of Brave. I'm gonna have to switch out. So forgive me. I'll be back.
All right, let Adam go in while you wait.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so anybody can play the tape back, and I want them to see the order of the points that were made. Okay, because what happened was, Brother Jabari, you mentioned that we were given Christianity in chains, or however you framed it, and you said that in the context of talking about the West African slave castles, they would call them. You were talking about, you showed the pictures, so on and so forth. So in response to your statement about Christianity and slavery in West Africa, I gave you the source of Christians who were in West Africa prior to the period that you're talking about. That was the context. Now, if you want to go to East Africa and have that conversation, then in context of what we're talking about, that's just a different conversation. I'm saying, but I just want to be clear in terms of what I'm responding to, right? Secondly, again, and I keep hammering this point home, and I promise you, I'm not going to be a broken record all night, but I really want people to understand this. Earlier, you said, I asked you your perspective on the one, and I made sure that I got clarity that everything is an expression of the one or an emanation of the one. You said yes. Now, all I did was take what you said and follow it to its logical conclusions, because if everything is an expression of the one or an emanation of the one, then it follows that the white man's an expression and emanation. The bull that beat my ancestors was expression and emanation of the one, all on down the line. Now you're saying that no, there's a second part that I didn't take into account. That's fine. So we can talk about that. You said that, we're falling from, that divine, whatever, however you reframe it. I don't want to misrepresent what you're saying. Now, my question to you then is, in this fallen state, does that mean that we're not in some sense connected to the one whatsoever? Like we're just totally disconnected from the one? Or is everything still one? We're just in a different position within that one? That would be my question for clarity's sake.
I can answer. Yes. I actually would argue that all things are still part of the one, but that ignorance of our true nature actually allows us to do many things that are not in divine order. And in fact, in the Kemetic tradition, there is the order and then there is chaos.
It's fair.
That two of them continue to do battle with each other.
Yeah, Ma'at is fair.
And if you're not an element of Ma'at, then you become an element of chaos. But in fact, yes, chaos is also something that is part of the one. Just as in the Christian tradition, I know you're trying to slip this one, but you just got to recognize you have a black eye because I hit you with it.
No, I can give. I would like to respond to that because there's a difference.
Wait a minute. Satan was created by God. Am I wrong?
I would like to respond to what you said before, but I don't want to cut you off. So I'll wait.
Okay.
And then, you know.
Yeah, let vocab go.
Are you also gonna respond
Jabari, you just said Satan was created by God.
I'll respond to that. I'll respond to that. That's
Okay.
fine.
Woo.
I'll respond to that. Okay, do you want me to respond now or?
I would love for you to respond right now.
Okay, so all right, good. So we're talking about two different theological systems, right? We're talking about Kemet and we're talking about Christianity. I'm putting them side by side so we can compare them. When it comes to Christianity, my perspective is that you do indeed have a Most High God who created beings who have a will. They can either will to do right or they can will to do wrong. In the case of Satan, he chose to use his will to go against God's moral nature, right? That's what you have going on there. You have the God being, the Most High God, and you have beings who are able to exercise their will to either align with his moral nature or go away from it. Now, the difference is that's Christianity. In Kemet, the problem is this: when everything is one, Isfet is one, and Ma'at is one, order and chaos, like you just said. So there's no differentiation between. There is no moral Most High being that is completely pure and free of moral failings. I'm saying that doesn't exist on the Kemetic tradition as you described it. And I'll sum it up. I'll be quick. When it comes to the Christian tradition, you have a morally perfect being who created beings who have a will and thus the capacity to function in a way that's not morally right. That's Christianity. In your worldview, everything is part of the one. And so the being that does right and the being that does wrong are both parts of and expressions of the one. That's why I said if that white slave owner is committing Isfet and expressing Isfet and beating my black ancestor, according to you, that is part of the one. That's part of the Most High being in your theology. So you can't say that I'm misrepresenting. You just clarify where you're coming from. And pardon me for getting jazzed up. I get passionate about these kind of things because it really matters. But at the end of the day, if everything is part of the one, including Isfet, then when the white colonizers built those slave castles that you just showed, that was your one doing what it does. Everything that has happened to our people that's evil is as a result of the one, according to your theology. That's what I'm saying.
All right, let me get this straight, Jabari. Let me get this real quick. You know I don't speak long, Jabari. Let me get this straight from both of you brothers here. Adam, would you say that God also created homosexuality and stuff like that?
No, I would say that God created beings who have the that's it. God created beings who have the capacity to either do right or do wrong. They have the ability to do so. Now, I'm trying to avoid philosophical language for the sake of going over people's head, but God created beings that had the ability to do right or wrong. I would consider homosexuality, so on and so forth. So, for example, like in the contentions of Horus and Seth, where they talks about Seth, I think it was putting semen on lettuce and making Horus eat it. Like, I'm saying that the Most High God that I hold to would be against that. That's what I'm saying. So,
in other words, you saying yes. So,
no,
that means what you're saying is that God tempts people. God give people temptation, because if he create good, he create evil. If he create God, if he create the devil, then he's creating temptation in man to do good or do evil. Wouldn't you say that, right or wrong?
No, I don't think so. So what I would say is that two levels. Number one, I don't believe. Put it this way. Let's talk physics for a second. Okay, cold doesn't actually exist. Cold is the absence of heat, just like darkness is the absence of light. Check any science book, that's the truth. What I'm saying is, in the same sense that cold or darkness exists, that's kind of how evil is. It's the absence of good. It doesn't exist in and of itself. Now, God created beings who have a will, and therefore they have the capacity, the ability, I'll say, to choose to do evil. And so that might be homosexuality. It might be robbing a bank. It might be writing a story like the contentions of Horus and Seth, where you have two deities having sex with one another, male deities and so forth. It could be any of those things.
But if God create good and God create evil, I, the Lord God, do all these things, and then he gives you a choice and gives you a will, like you say, then that means he's tempting you, brother. I don't know how y'all don't see the how easy this is. Because he give you a will to do good, or hold up, Jabari, or he give you the will to do evil. I'm the Lord God going to let you choose and figure out, do you want to be straight or do you want to be bent? Brother, you can't take the power away from God. God is the one that gives you all of that. All right, go ahead. Go ahead, brother. Jabari.
I just want to be really clear that Adam didn't even answer my question. My question was, and I'll say it again for the fourth time, did God create Satan? It's a very simple question. In fact, I think most people agree it's a yes or no question.
God created a being with the will, with the capacity to do right or wrong, name Satan, or what we call Satan. Right.
Okay, so the answer is yes.
Yeah, okay, sure.
Okay, good. Okay, good. And as you say that cold is actually the absence of heat,
Take a science book.
You know enough to know that the absence of right order is called.
If you're talking about the Kemetic
tradition,
it's fit.
Okay.
Okay, chaos.
I want you to recognize that when I say that all things are one, if God created all things, then you are saying something very similar to what I am saying. But unfortunately, I don't think that you humbly, this is not meant to be a slight, but this is truly what I believe.
Sure.
I don't believe that you have a fundamental understanding of what you're saying. And I honestly believe that anyone in the chat room, my 8-year-old cousin, could hear what you're saying. If God created Satan and Satan is the archetype for evil, then God created evil.
Okay, so
all the tautology.
No, it's not called. It's not a tautology. That's not true.
Hold on. I want you to understand that, of course, free will. You think that free will is a Christian concept. Let me read you from a text. Can I do that? Because you did say you want to know more, right? This comes from the world's oldest complete book. Okay? Do you know the name?
Hurry up, Jabari, because I want to let Vocab get in here too.
Sure, but do you know the name of it?
I'm sorry, I got lost in the course. I couldn't hear. Say it again.
I said this comes from the world's oldest complete book. Are you familiar with the name of it?
Oh, I don't know. Papyrus of Annie. Where are we going to go?
Okay, no, Papyrus of Annie is like 1,000 years old, younger than this.
Okay, fine.
Okay. What I'm trying to express to you is that while you think that you have heard a lot about the Kemetic tradition, apparently you think you have.
But you haven't refuted what I said, but go ahead.
No, I have, and I'm not sure exactly why you're not hearing it. It's really, it's kind of...
Because rather than proving me right or wrong, you're talking about what Christians believe. You're not defending what you believe.
No. What I'm saying is, I don't need to prove you right or wrong.
You're trying to say we're in the same boat.
I'm saying you don't understand the question you're asking. So if you
understand
ask a poor question, you'll automatically going to get a poor answer. You are intimating that because I said all things are part of the one, that anything that all of those things, those entities do is by extension good. And I did not say that.
That's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying.
I said that what we must all attempt to do is cultivate our divinity so we can truly be part of the source. Again, we can be part of this one.
Okay, so let me...
one.
All right, so let me be fair. Let me be fair. I think I just
wait.
Right.
And what I have said is that if you are saying that God created Satan and Satan is evil, then in fact what you are saying is that God created evil. But you are trying to say that in your tradition there's this concept of free will, and you're intimating that it's not in our tradition. Let me read you a very small passage. Okay, this is the sixth maxim of what is known as the maxims of Ptahotep. Okay, this comes from what I would say is truth, but obviously you're not familiar with it, and you've already judged it as falsity. So let me just read it for you. It says, "Do not scheme against people. The inter punishes accordingly. If a man says, 'I shall live by it,' he will lack bread for his mouth. If a man says, 'I shall be rich,' he will have to say, 'My cleverness has snared me.' If he says, 'I will snare for myself,' he will be unable to say, 'I snared for my profit.' Profit is in making something, earning something.
Okay.
If a man says, 'I will rob someone,' he will end being given to a stranger. People's schemes do not prevail. The Nectaru's command is what prevails. Live then in the midst of peace. What they give comes by itself. What you are hearing is a description of the importance of living according to Ma'at and not actually giving in to Isfet. He didn't say you have no choice, Ma'at just exists. Clearly, he's saying you must live in the choice of Ma'at. And if you choose not to, then you are an Isfet and you will be punished.
All right, Brother Jabari. Hold on, Brother Adam. I want to bring on Vocab because he's sitting there. I want him to get it in. But I just want to also say this. Brothers, you don't need to try to defend God. God don't need you to defend him. All you got to do is read the scripture. You see it right there. He's telling you right there, I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. The Lord God, do all these things. So, brother, are you saying you don't agree with this scripture? But I want to move on to Vocab. That's all. I don't need your response. I don't need your response. Let me just move on to Vocab.
I'll come back to it later. All right.
Yes, you can come back to it.
Okay,
Vocab.
I mean, I was enjoying the conversation. You know, I was definitely enjoying it. I feel like I was digging it. One key difference in what Jabari is talking about here is that we have a God who is self-existent, so he eternally exists. And then when he creates with intentionality and purpose. In fact, Ephesians 1 speaks of the elect that he has chosen before the foundation of the world, which is the way to say before our understanding of time began. This is when the triune God dwells in the eternity past, to put it in a manner of speaking. He creates, he ordains, he plans, and he knows all thoughts at once. That's what omniscience is. Simultaneous awareness. It's not a growing in knowledge or wisdom. But within the Kemetic traditions, and everybody should be aware that a lot of these cities within ancient Egypt had their own various traditions and forms. So when he talks about the Kemetic tradition, it's kind of like, what set you claiming though, Jabari? Because I want to know what city you identify with, because the cities themselves would have different traditions. And here is one about the creation, because what this shows is the bizarre and, to be frank with you, self-contradictory nature of Egyptian creation, supposedly, which to Adam's point shows we're dealing with a totally different worldview. And Jabari has no foundation for morality, for ethics, and he really has no ultimate way to distinguish good versus evil. Look at this from the creation here. Had I admitted Tefnut, not existed another who worked with me. I made a foundation in my heart, my own. There came the multitudes which came of the things which from out of the things which came of birth, from out of the things which of their births, even I, had union with my clenched hand. For those who don't understand the context means he's grabbing his meat. Okay, so his hand is on the pump, so to speak. And look what he says here. This is one of Jabari's gods. He says, I had union with my clenched hand. That's a fancy way, Jabari, to say I'm whacking off. I had union with my clenched hand. So all the teenagers in the audience, next time your mom busts in on you, but like, Mom, I'm having union with my clenched hand, just like the gods of old. I had union with my clenched hand. I joined myself in an embrace with my shadow. This God is so narcissistic, he's about to get turned on by his own shadow. Now, I've seen my shadow. I don't know what will be appealing that will make me want to masturbate to my shadow. But this God apparently has different tastes. And this is how this God creates, by getting turned on by his shadow. And then watch what he's going to do, everybody. I joined myself in with an embrace of my shadow, and I poured seed into my mouth, my own. Now, there's lots of places you could put it, but into your mouth seems like the strangest repository of them all. And Jabari wants to tell me, because I'm not the right ethnic feature, I can't criticize this madness. I think anybody should be able to criticize this madness. Now, let's just finish the last page now. I sent forth issue in the form of shoe. I sent forth moisture in the form of saith my father. That's new. They make to my eye behind them, because for double they proceeded from me after I became from God, one God's three. That is, from out of I came in earth, we raised it. This is a little translation, that's why it's a little blocky. Therefore, shew Tefnut in the inner watery mass wherein they were, brought they to me my eye in their train. Okay, so look, this is one of many creation myths that he tells us we should respect, and we're not allowed to criticize if we don't look the right way. What Jabari wants to do, he knows that this insanity is in his creation myths, and he knows it's one of many, showing you that they're not true. None of them, not a one of them. That's why we can't trust Kemet on how the world came to be. And since we can't trust it on its foundation, we can't trust it on anything else after that. We have gods whacking off into their own mouth to create other gods. Where is the plan? Where is the ordination? Where is the setting up of things? Where is the rationality? It's not there. It's just a God getting turned on by his shadow. Now, contrast that to in the beginning, God said, let there be, and it was. Let there be, and it was. Contrast that. This is a God who then sets down 10 commandments modeled after his own moral character and says, follow those. This is a radical difference. And that's why Adam and I are both pressing Jabari. And what he wants to do is patronize Adam. You don't really understand what you're asking, family. Damn right he understands what he's saying. Otherwise, he wouldn't have asked you the question, brother. He knows exactly what he's saying. He is asking you this question because no one has ever pressed you on your own presuppositions and turned them on himself. Brother, you've got to learn how to be internally consistent with your own worldview. Atheists will like you when you criticize us Christians. They'll say, rah, rah, rah. Brother Reggie's going to say, get him, get him, get him. But the second your own internal presuppositions are turned on themselves, like Adam just masterfully did. And now you know why I brought him. I asked him and I told him, hey, bro, after this, maybe I can just get out of the way and you can do dialogues from now on. I'm just here for the first one because I think that'll be much more, you know what I'm saying? So this is just my one. And Jabari's already told me I look the wrong way for us to have a conversation. I'm not allowed to. So Jabari, I enjoy our last conversation very much since I'm not allowed to have any more with you. But Adam is going to be more than you can handle because he's just turned your own moral presuppositions because you have no foundation for morality. He understands very well what he's saying. I hope you understand what he's saying. This shows you have no ability to then critique anyone else's moral foundation. And that's why I asked you in the beginning, what gives one the ability to make a moral critique? You never answered, and you can't. Because if it's going to be, well, if you've beat these people up in the past, then you can't critique them now. Well, let's talk about Egyptian retainer sacrifice. Get to slay people underneath, strangle them all at once, then throw them under the pyramid you just built for your king. What this is a great class system in ancient Kemet, including Semites and Nubians. You can't critique any Semites. You can't critique any Nubians because you called them wretched. So guess what? Modern day Sudan, Jabari, you better not critique the Salafi Islam present there of the Malaki jurisprudence understanding. You better never critique Salafi Islam of Sudan because you, according to your own spiritual tradition in the past, were slaughtering them and calling them wretched and vile and chopping their heads off and all kinds of other things. So I don't see you now in the same tradition of your elders have any right to criticize modern day Sudan. And we could go on and on with this, but this is not, brother, it's just us saying, look at the mirror, Jabari. Look at the mirror. That's all we're doing.
Somehow this nigga on some wild, crazy shit.
Okay,
man, Jabari. I mean, Jabari, I think I might have to call Reggie, man.
Can I ask?
I got to call Reggie, man.
Call him.
Listen.
Call him.
Damn.
Listen.
Call him.
Vocab turning up right now, Jabari.
Anetta, I know you're trying to whoop him up so he feels better. But when you are speaking in a room to yourself, you always sound good.
Go ahead.
When other people hear you, they recognize you are like a third grader reading War and Peace. You have no understanding of what you're reading. So you mentioned one deity named Tefnut. Who was Tefnut? You read it. Do you know who Tefnut is?
Let's go. He answer.
Are you Googling? What do you do? We see the screen.
He's muted. He's muted. I don't even realize he's muted.
Well, brother, how many gods? Hey, brother, that's okay. How many gods, Jabari, how many gods does ancient Egypt have?
I asked you a question. Answer the question.
Right. Tefnut, god of wet stuff. How many gods does ancient Egypt have?
Let me
Could
say.
you just answer that real quick, and I'll let you go on. How many gods do you guys have?
No. This is my time, so I'm asking you a question.
This is like trying to keep track of all the white players on the Mavericks, bro. Y'all got too many of them.
What you're gonna do?
Y'all got too many. You can't expect us to keep track of them all.
You and Adam are doing.
You can't answer though.
Trying not to, and it's amazing because there are two of you. This is really like one of those handicap matches where the other little short guy kicks the other one in the back. But it always ends with the two short guys getting smacked together and being pinned, right? Okay. So
Thank you, Hulk Hogan. Continue on.
My turn. You can talk over when it's my turn. But the audience knows that means that you're not able to contend with what I've said. And we could even see you Googling Tefnut on your glasses. Which means that you read something.
I don't have any lenses, bro.
You had no idea what it was.
Wrong.
So it wasn't on your glasses. It was on your.
Let me just show you, brother. I got the sources right here, brother.
Listen to what? Just because you have.
I got the sources right here, brother.
Will you let it? Could you let him let me speak, because he's just. Okay, so let me go. Because I didn't interrupt you, and now you're interrupting the entire time. Okay. So we know that you didn't know who Tefnut was. Tefnut is moisture. See, one of the things that happens when you read something and you have no understanding of what you're reading, you begin to instead insert things that you think you're hearing. And that is what children do. That's the reason why kids laugh when they hear words that sound funny in school. And that's the reason why you sound, like I said, like a third grader reading War and Peace with no understanding of what you're reading. Clearly, if you understood the characters that were being described, you would understand two things. First of all you're hearing is that this deity is the self-created. That is what they are saying. They are saying that this deity is the all and creates from, in this instance, himself. But you know what? Even when they I'm not going to go too deep. I want you to understand that this is the deity that creates all things. And when you hear seed, I'm assuming you've had an apple. I'm assuming you've had a pear. I'm assuming you've had grapes. Well, you had seed in your mouth there, brother. When they say seed, I want you to understand that as they're talking about Shu and Tefnut, the principle of air and the principle of moisture, they are not talking about human beings. They are talking about how the divine entity, how this one becomes the many. And so you can try to make fun of the fact that this deity uses the seed that comes from him to create. But the only reason why you can make fun of that is because I know you have children. Maybe you're not familiar with how children are made. That's kind of strange. But children, in fact, all things come from seed. We are talking clearly about something that is symbolic. We're not talking about a dude. We're not talking about a teenager as you've described it. All you've done is you've read a text and done the Beavis and Butthead. But you need to actually have an understanding of what you're reading. And because you spoke the name Tefnut, I didn't. You had no idea who
I think you froze, yo.
Tefnut's counterpart is Shu. So there's the moisture and the air. By the way, you don't even know what deity is speaking. What you need to do is actually listen to people who have read the text and study the text so they can explain it to you. And if you think that actually taking a man's seed is dirty, then I guess you've never used seed. Well, imagine if you're talking about divine seed.
Never true. I got the source right here, bro.
Hold on. You're searching for it. Vocab, we can see it on your face, brother. I'm not searching anything. I'm not searching anything. I'm telling you what I know because I've studied this for 30 years. So what I'm saying to you is that you don't understand what you're reading. Then you said, well, there's no moral code and that our God has the 10 commandments. 8 of your 10 commandments come from commandments from Kemet. Stop it. 80% of what you are talking about comes from Kemet. By the way, the first issue of your 10 commandments is in those books that sometimes we call Deuteronomy. There are a larger compendium of laws in Deuteronomy. And while you love to talk about the 10 Commandments, I'd love for you to talk about the other laws that are part of that the 10 Commandments come from, including the one where if you find that your wife is not a virgin, you can stone her to death.
Oh,
and hate her.
no.
Those are your laws too. Don't just fall on the ones that people know. I've read your books. You haven't read mine.
Uh-oh.
That's the challenge here. I have studied these traditions my entire life. And you are doing the Beavis and Butthead. And then say, what about retainer sacrifice when they sacrifice their servants and throw them under the pyramids? That's a quote. I want you, I challenge you. You can take a week. I want you to prove to me that that occurred. Now, I want you to recognize that you're talking to someone who has investigated archaeological digs, who has studied ancient Kemet for 30 plus years, I'm getting old, and has also traveled there 17 this summer, if the creator wills, 18 times.
I'll drop the link in the chat.
I want you to understand. No, I want you to tell me that it happened. You can't just read someone saying, hey, retainer sacrifices, people threw. This is what you said. They threw their servants under the pyramids. You now need to justify your statement. And when you are unable to, by the way, Vocab, you don't even need to look because I'm going to tell you you're not going to find it. I'm going to tell you you're not going to find it. So when you do that, you'll realize that all you're doing is once again being a third grader reading War and Peace. You're saying some things, but you have no understanding. A suggestion, if you really want to have an understanding, take my course. I'll read to you the primary sources and prove it to you. Because that's what you need. Instead of making fun and trying to regale people with descriptions of masturbation, what you have to do is understand you have little understanding for the text that you're reading. By the way,
it won't be nothing.
You don't know what deity is speaking. You don't know who he's speaking to. You think it's funny that he has seed. You know, the funny thing is in our creation story, at least you see female deities. Can I ask you a question? I really need to ask you a question. Can you show this, Sonetta? How do your dudes do creation? If these are your divine forces, what? Let me do the Beavis and Butthead for a second. Does the young man have sex with a bird, or does the old man have sex with the young man? Or
I don't know what that's a picture of, Jabari. What's that a picture of?
Yes, you do.
I don't know.
Yes, you do. Stop it. I know you do, because everyone in the room knows what it is.
Oh, I know. You want to see a jackal-headed god or a god with an eagle head. Then you'll be happy. My bad.
What I'm saying to you is, if I said that about you, it would be because I have no understanding of your tradition. What I'm trying to say is you actually believe the ridiculousness because you have no understanding. At least you're hearing the divine feminine. There is no divine feminine in your tradition. And you want to make fun of a deity that creates with the divine feminine. Yet you only have the divine masculine.
Shadow.
All you have is what is the word for shadow?
Gay.
Word. In the Kemetic tradition. Do you know? Vocab.
I got it. I mean, I got it right here. I got it. I can show it to you.
Listen to me. You are out of your league. The word for shadow is kaibit. Do you hear the E on the end? What does that render that word?
Kaibita.
What does that render the word?
This ain't Sonetta talking.
What does it render the word, Vocab? If you don't know, say you don't know right now for the people.
Wait, are you going to tell us you know more than Budge now?
Brother, answer the question. Do you know what the T at the end of the word renders it?
What I like here is this, Jabari.
Let me give you the answer.
Hey, if my guy was whacking off in his own math, I'd be embarrassed too. And so you're grandstanding.
The T at the end renders it feminine. All you are seeing is that this is a divine force who is a self-created, and they still had the nerve to try to put femininity into it. In the tradition that you are subscribing to, you got a young man, an old man, and a bird. You have no right to make fun here. Is it bestiality or is it pedophilia? You tell me.
Jabari needs to take a Christianity 101 course. I won't even charge him.
I would rather have, don't say, come on now. He was the one talking about people being thrown under pyramids, which he knows is not, well, he doesn't know.
I got an academic article right here. This is what I drew it from. I got it right here.
He's the one that also said that You have a guy jacking off and got aroused by himself and was jacking off with his seed.
Hey, is it my turn yet? Because you've been going for a while, bro. I'm just saying. I'm not trying to be rude. But
he's the one. You've been rude the whole night, but he's the one because you've interrupted the whole night. The whole night you've interrupted, and I've listened to both of you. There are two of you.
My apologies. My apologies.
It wasn't intended to be a 2-on-1. This was intended to be a 1-on-1. Now you can't complain because you don't have the equal time as the one.
I don't want to complain, but I'm just trying to respond to what you said.
You're the two little guys fighting the big guy. That's what you did. That I didn't do that.
Hey, you got home court advantage. I'm just saying, like we coming out.
Jabari,
we travel to the game. We travel to the game.
Anyway,
will you get to it? How do you defend God whacking off in his own mouth?
You know what? You are a child. You're not listening. Because we are not, first of all, talking about a person.
Right. They didn't exist. We finally agree.
Wait a minute. And second of all, we are talking about principles. You mentioned Tefnut. You didn't know who Tefnut was. Tefnut is nothing but moisture, and Shu is nothing but air. If you understood, because one of the reasons why you don't understand this, because you're trying to render these like gods in your tradition. They don't exist quite the same way in the Kemetic tradition. I could explain it to you if you were willing to listen and not be Beavis and Butthead. But you have to understand that we're talking about principles.
Where does it say that?
Where does what say what?
In the text I just read, where's it tells you this is just a principle, none of these existed, even though priests dedicate their life to it, and people did retainer sacrifice, sometimes willing, sometimes unwilling.
Brother, wait a minute.
Why? If it's not real,
you read it. I didn't read it. You read it, and
do you have volume 1 and volume 2 of Budge's Gods of the Egyptians?
Of course I do. You know.
Then go to page 310 of volume 1, please.
Understand. Listen, I'm not basing it. I don't have to read what it said. You daggered yourself because you said Tefnut and you didn't know who Tefnut was.
Hey, can I get my response in there?
You read it. You didn't even realize that you were sticking yourself in the head with the knife.
Hey, Jabari, that's what your God does.
Because you didn't know what you're reading. And see, he's going to do Beavis and Butthead again.
Brother, teach us the deeper meaning of whacking off into your own mouth then. Teach us the deep meaning.
Have you eaten an apple?
Bro, it says my own seed in the text, brother. It says my own seed. It says my own seed. It don't say seed from somebody else.
Deity are you referring to? Who is it that's speaking?
I just told you who it was. His name is hard. No, I just told you earlier. His name is hard to pronounce. Hold on, I got it right here because I have the original source on the screen as well.
Can I tell you something?
His name is a little hard to pronounce.
I want to tell you something before you say it because I know what you're going to say. But the reason why you're going to say it is because you haven't read all the source text. You're going to say Nebecher.
The words of Nebecher, which he spake after he had come into being.
Vocab. Nebecher is not a name. Nebecher is a title. It means the Lord deity. That's all it means.
Okay. Let's just say you're right.
And I also want you to understand, and this is something that happens very often, and I keep saying it, but because you are ensconced in Western thought, I don't blame you, being a paisan as you call yourself.
Hey!
Adam here, because Adam with those locks on his head should get this.
Okay.
But I want you to understand that we are in fact talking about principles. And if you read the rest of the divine forces in that same description that you're describing, you're going to see one of them is infiniteness, one of them is darkness, one of them is nothingness. So they're talking about principles. When you said, where does it say it? It says it in the name that you spoke. You didn't know the name. You said, well, where's the divine? It's his shadow. You didn't know the word for shadow. You just looked it up, but you don't know.
It's on the screen.
Works. You don't know how the language works, so you didn't understand what was being said. Now, if you don't have an understanding and you read it without an understanding, I'm not blaming you for not having an understanding.
Hey, can I ask a question?
What I'm saying is that you need to speak to someone that can show you all of the text so you can.
I want to ask a question. That's interesting what you said about principles. So can I get in and do my response? I do want to ask a question about it. Sincerely, I really do.
I'll conclude.
So a couple things I feel like where we might be talking past each other. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to build some bridges here, right?
I think we are.
Now, one of your main critiques with Vocab is that you're saying he's talking out of turn and doesn't know what he's talking about. But in terms of the argument that I'm making here, I'm only basing it off of your interpretation of your theology. You know, I've asked you questions about what you believe and the one and so on and so forth, and I'm building from there, right? So now what happened was I just wanted to just kind of narrate. I promise I won't be long with it. I promise. when it comes to, this comparison, I'll say, or contrast, let's just say contrast between Christianity and Kemeticism, what I've done is I made a critique and said that your theology leads to really heinous moral conclusions. And what you try to do is, rather than refute my understanding of what you guys believe, or so on and so forth, your main claim, it seemed to me, was to try to say, well, you know what, actually, brother, because God created Satan, we're really in the same boat. So it's like a double-edged sword. So let me clarify something right quick. All right. Number one, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but you said that you're a theologian, essentially, you know what I'm saying? And you've been studying this for 30 years, but you made a very interesting, I'll just say it was a lack of nuance. You said that God created Satan, and if Satan is evil, then ... And you presuppose that Satan at his creation, was evil. You know what I'm saying? Rather than a being, as I said, who was created with a will and able to choose and to be in alignment with God's moral nature or not to. You made the presupposition that he was evil out the gate, and therefore God created evil. And what I'm saying is you missed a step, which then, alters the argument. With that being said, I want to state again what I actually believe. God created beings, including Satan, who had the capacity to act in ways that are in alignment with God's moral nature or not in alignment with God's moral nature. Satan and, I guess the rest of us, whoever else, chose to act not in alignment with God's moral nature. But we are agents, moral agents, who are independent, meaning separate beings than God himself. The problem is, when it comes to your theology, what I'm saying is, if God on Christianity is a morally perfect being who creates other beings who then act in ways that aren't morally perfect, then so be it. Those beings will get, whatever they, the fruits of their actions or whatever. The problem is, in your theology, is you don't have a being who's like a most high in your theology who is morally perfect. There, you have a being, the one, in which there's good and there's evil, right? There's order and there's chaos. Ma'at and Isfet is all part of the one, as you stated. You said I was wrong at first, but then you came back and stated it again. So the issue is this: if you have a morally perfect being that you find in Christianity, then you have a solid foundation from which to build a moral framework, a framework of ethics. If in Kemet you have a moral framework where at the base layer foundation, you have the one in which there is moral imperfection baked into that being, if you will, then you don't have a morally firm foundation to build an ethical system on. So at the end of the day, the one who occupies that, and that's why I keep saying it, that occupies that most high space in your theology. Say for me, the most high is Yahweh. If I understand correctly, for you, there would be nothing higher than the one, because everything is in the one. So there can be nothing higher, right? So, okay, well, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm saying, but if the one includes everything, then I don't know how something could be higher than everything that exists. But anyway, I'm saying if everything is in the one, then that means that the one was the knee that was on that was on George Floyd's neck. The one is Derek Chauvin. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can say, you can grimace if you want, but here's what I want you to do. You can't just say, well, Adam, y'all are in the same boat because God created, Satan. What you have to do is show me where I'm mistaken in my understanding such that my critique doesn't logically follow. That's what you have to do. And what you said was that even though we are all fallen from that divinity, nevertheless, we are all still expressions of, emanations of, part of the one. Therefore, even in our fallenness, even Derek Chauvin in his fallenness from divinity is a part of the one. Now, here's what I'm not saying. Here's what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that therefore everything is good. I'm not saying that you're saying that. I'm not saying that you're saying that slavery is good, colonizing is good, so on and so forth. That's not the argument that I'm making. The argument that I'm making is that all the evil that goes on is a part of the one. Therefore, that everything in your theology is morally flawed, such that you don't have a firm foundation from which to build a moral framework, in comparison to Christianity, where you do have a morally perfect being from which we do have a solid foundation to build a moral framework. And if it is the case that your theology does not afford us a moral foundation from which to build a framework, I'm saying is there's no way in the world that I could, as a rational person, I can't commit myself to a theology that at the end of the day, the most high being in that theology, or the everything, is literally the culprit behind all my struggles and the struggles of my people. Now, I'll end up with this because Sarnetter said something about Isaiah 45 and verse 7, I believe it is. We talked about how God created evil. Now, if you look at that, we have to understand, if I was having a conversation with Jabari and I'm like, if LeBron James wins 5 more championships, he's the greatest. Then LeBron James is the greatest of all time. If Sarnetta walks into the room as I'm saying LeBron James is the greatest of all time, he might be like, man, hold up, man, y'all be tripping, man. It's Michael Jordan, blah, blah, blah. And I would pause him and say, hey, bro, you didn't hear the whole context. So I said to say context is important. Likewise, when it comes to Isaiah 45, context is important because what you see in Isaiah 45 is a parallel where God says, I create light, darkness, I create, good, and I create evil. The context of that chapter is God is talking about how he deals with nations. I'm saying when God deals with nations, with dealing with the nation of Israel, when they're aligned with the covenant, then God is bringing about blessings. However, God is also a God of judgment. So if people are doing evil, they're going right. He gets busy and he brings calamity. If you look at you can smile if you want. Look at it in the Hebrew. Test me if I'm wrong. Captain Tazariak will even back me up on this one. As much as we might disagree with stuff, he's in the chat. If you look in the Hebrew, the word there is calamity. And every other translation that I'm aware of, other than the King James that you read, will render it as calamity because it's the better word that fits with the context of that passage. So when he talks about God creating evil, it's not talking about creating evil in the universal moral sense. It's talking about he creates calamity specifically in regard to judgment for those who are evildoers. Now, in order to refute me on that, you can't just shake your head. You got to go to the text and show me where I'm incorrect. You will also, again, to address my main argument, you can't just shake your head or say, well, God created Satan. You got to show me where either I'm having a misunderstanding about your theology, or you got to show me how your theology doesn't logically lead to the one having evil baked into it, such that one is not a foundation for a framework for ethics. That's what I would like you to respond to.
Really, really respectfully, I have to say, I think that you've said a lot, but you haven't said very much.
Show me.
I really do. I have to say to you that this is a very simple thing that you've tried to make very complex.
Okay.
And I just want you to understand that if your deity created all things, and that if evil exists, then your deity created evil. You have tried. I listened quietly. Why are you not able to do that?
Because you keep misrepresenting me, though. You keep putting words in my mouth. It's difficult.
Right. I write notes. You should be writing notes.
Okay.
You misrepresent me regularly. Both of you did. Vocab was talking about a teenager jerking off in his room and his mom. You think I agreed with that?
All right. Hey, real quick, brother Jabari,
responding.
Hold on, Jabari. You know when I say something, it's only for a minute, and it's only to give you more power and fuel. But anyway, I'm letting Jabari go on, but I must say this because I caught the same thing that Jabari had. Adam, you keep on trying to act like the Most High did not create the evil that's in the city. Let me take you to Amos 3:6. Shall a trumpet be blown in the city, and the people not be afraid? Be afraid. Shall there be evil in the city, and the Lord has not done it? So, brother, do you believe in the book or you don't believe in the book?
I believe the God passage.
I'm bringing you DNA after DNA of the scriptures, and you still denying the power of your God.
That's not true.
I don't get it. I don't get it, brother.
Okay, can I explain?
I'm quite sure, brother, you interrupting, bro.
I'm supposed to be speaking.
You're interrupting, brother. I'm quite sure Vocab does not deny this because I interviewed the brother. He straight up told you, yes, the Most High created homosexuality. He created evil. You know what I'm saying? But see, you got to understand, he created. I always tell Captain Tazariak this. When I ask the question, did the Most High create homosexuality? The proper answer would be yes. And to back it up would be, he created it for his purpose. He wanted to see, he created it because he create good and evil. He gives you the opportunity, the choice to choose which one you're going to take. But brother, y'all always get caught up because you trying to defend the Most High. He don't need your defense. He put within, this supposed to be the book of the Most High. So he put in the book right there for you to see it, and y'all still denies it. So go ahead, brother Jabari.
There is a lot of people. There is a lot of people.
Hey, Sonny, you sniping me though. Dog. I can't respond to that though. You got the sniper rifle out.
You got to come back to it, but let Jabari go.
All right, cool.
I've been writing notes when y'all are talking.
I'm having fun, man. I'm having fun, man. I appreciate it.
I mean, come on, y'all said all kinds of crazy stuff.
No, it's cool. I'm having fun, man. My bad. You got it.
And I want you to recognize that you've tried to make something simple very, very complex. And I think that a child could understand this. If your divine force created evil, created Satan, and Satan is evil, then your divine force created evil. In fact, let's go further. Are you saying that your divine force didn't create everything in the universe? Is there someone else there that creates the rest of the universe?
Go ahead.
I can answer. Can I answer that?
No, not yet. It's a rhetorical question.
I didn't know.
I'll give you a moment to respond after, but I want you to recognize that if your divine force is all powerful and has created all things, then clearly if there's evil in the universe, then your divine force created it. Now, your explanation of free will is an acceptable answer. I find that acceptable. But I want you to understand that free will doesn't just exist in the Christian tradition. I read you from a text that says that free will existed before that. That's what I'm trying to say to you.
I understand.
And in your spiritual text, we see a divine force that kills babies. We see a divine force that sanctions the stoning and the burning of women. We see a divine force that kills animals. Just people, just random, just kill them all. It's acceptable. That's what we see. So for you to try to pretend that you have a morally just divinity, I mean, the only way you could say that is if you've only been to church and not read the text. Because I know Pastor didn't read it, but I know, Adam, you have. So stop pretending like you didn't read it. You read it. There are many places in the Bible that God does things that are objectionable. Stop trying to explain it that way. It's in the text. I could read you a dozen of them. By the way, before Sonetta put up the text, I had it. I was going to read you Isaiah 45:7. Okay. Calamity is not evil. Really? Oh, really? Calamity is not. You think because it's a fancier word, it don't mean evil? I've experienced calamity in my life. That's evil. I mean, just because it's a fancier word that we don't use, stop it.
That's not what I'm saying. Okay.
The reality is that your divine force has created all things. By the way, that description of moving over the waters, most people who have read all the texts say that it seems very similar to the text that is sometimes called the Memphite theology.
With the noon, right? Okay.
Which is on which artifact? Now, this is the question. Do you know the artifact that it's on?
There's different creation myths, so I'm not really sure which one you're drawing from.
One. I'm talking about one.
Well, okay, I'm just saying.
Theology is on one artifact. Do you know what it is?
I don't know. I just know I know the noon character is described as eternal chaos and the waters and so forth.
It's generally today called the Shabaka stone. It's in the British Museum.
Okay.
If you look at my social media, you'll see me standing next to it.
Okay.
Right? Now, I am not a really good reader of the Metanetter. I'm a basic reader. My wife was there reading even better than I could. But I want you to understand that the things that you are intimating about your tradition that are saving are the same things I could say about the Kemetic tradition. But what you will not find is descriptions of the divine force saying, you know what, there's some babies over there. Go kill them. You won't find that in the Kemetic text. You won't find that. I can find it all day long in your text. You won't find a description that says, you know what, if this woman is not a virgin on your marriage bed, by the way, the only way that she can be saved is if her parents come with the cloth, intimating that they have to have the blood from the cloth. By the way, do you know that when a woman's hymen breaks, it doesn't always bleed? Did you know that? Did you know that woman's hymen can break from something other than intercourse? So what if homegirl was riding on a horse and she broke her hymen, and now her husband is trying to get it in the first night and he doesn't see blood? Do you know that if her parents cannot find the sheet that is in the husband's house, by the way, with the blood on it, she can be stoned to death because she sought to be a whore in her father's house? Now, you know I'm quoting it. You know I'm quoting it. Just nod. You know I'm quoting it. I'm quoting your text.
I just think it's strange for somebody.
And you haven't quoted anything from my text. This is the reason why.
And I quoted you, Jabari.
The reason, yeah, but
I quoted you.
You did not quote me. I said two sentences and you chose to use one. And I keep saying the two sentences.
And I address the second.
Free will exists in our tradition as well. I just read to you. Free will exists in our tradition as well. Of course it does.
Sure.
And you know what? You made a description that sounded like it was supposed to be so out of the way that I was not going to agree with it. You said that even Jarek Chauvin is part of the one. And guess what?
Yeah, every evil. I'm saying all evil. That I just use him as an example.
Is part of the one. But through his actions, he has been so far removed from his divinity that there will be judgment. I read it to you.
But you missed the point,
I read it to you. There will be punishment for doing Isfat. I read it to you. By the way, do you remember the name of the book? No, you don't remember the name of the book.
I don't know what you're talking about. Which book?
The book that I read to you from, the oldest book in the world.
Jabari,
you know what happens sometimes? You know what
I want to respond to you, but you keep asking a rhetorical question. I don't know when to jump in or not. You know what I mean? So,
this is not a rhetorical question. Do you remember the name of the book?
No, I don't. You said it. I mean,
you know what gets me upset sometimes? Sonnet, I'm going to say this very clearly. Sometimes when people see me here, they say he's being condescending. But when I know your information and my information, and you don't know my information, I have to switch from debate mode to teach mode.
But you don't know our information.
That is what is happening here.
You don't know our information.
I'm quoting from your biblical text.
Can I give you an example?
And you don't even know the primary, well, some of the primary text.
Brother.
And the Papyrus of Ani, which is over 1,000 years younger than the one I'm mentioning.
Okay.
You have said that there is no moral guide. A child that wrote a paper on Kemet in 4th grade knows that there are descriptions of moral guides that come forth in Kemet, much earlier than the Christian tradition. And in fact, there are many who have acknowledged that 8 of your 10 commandments seem to come from the Kemetic text. By the way, there are other sections of your biblical narrative that come from Kemetic text. It's not the only one. You've probably heard me say this before.
I have, yeah.
So you know what I'm talking about. I don't even need to go there. You already bloodied. I don't need to punch you again. What I'm saying to you
is Jabari done?
What I'm saying.
It's been a minute.
It's my turn next, though. Just remember, it's my turn next.
I will. What I'm saying to you is very clearly that you need to do a lot of research. I want you to, if you really want to have a real dialogue, I need you to read the Maxims of Ptahhotep. I need you to read the Instructions of Amenemop.
I read that.
You read the Instructions of Amenemop?
About 2 years ago, yeah.
And what did you realize about it?
I realized that, all right. Can I answer that?
Yes, I want you to, because I know what you have to say if you're being honest.
Well, actually, I don't know where you're going with it. Go for it. Yeah, go for it.
Instructions of Amenemop is very interesting because most biblical scholars now acknowledge that it is found in your later Christian text.
Which text? You tell me. I mean, because we can. You want to talk about Proverbs? We can.
It's in Proverbs.
I know it is. That's why I just said it. So we can talk about that if you want.
To say to you is that's what biblical scholars say now. That's the majority position. The minority position is, well, there must have been an older text that they both were they both were influenced by, but we don't know where that text is. We have no copy of it. That's a flimsy argument if you ask.
All right, Jabari, let me bring on them, man. Adam, let me bring on you, Adam. Let me say this real quick, though.
Okay.
You know I'm quick. I don't be long. I got to keep saying that because when I tell y'all, sound chill. But let me say this, though, Adam. You got to know, according to your scriptures, if you read in the book, that the Most High sent down Satan to do his bidding. The Most High sent down Satan. He cast him. Get out of here. Kicked him out. And Satan works for God. Doesn't Satan works for God? Satan can't kill nobody without God's permission. You know that. This is according to the scriptures. Satan can't do anything without the will of God. So he sent them and cast them out of heaven, sent them to earth to do his bidding. I'll prove it to you with one of the baddest men on the planet.
You sniping me again, man. You keep sniping.
Here we go right here. Hold on.
Okay.
Hold on. Here you go right here. This is one of the baddest men that ever did it when it comes to dropping this information. Because he keeps it real. So I give it to the captain.
Captain, okay.
Yeah, I got to give it to Captain for keeping it real. And he's letting you know that God is the one that sanctioned all evil. Check it out.
Satan that come down here, any spirit the Lord choose to come down here and send an earthquake, to send a tsunami, to send pestilence, to send destruction. The Lord can choose anything, anybody to send them. Now, what would we call it? We would call it evil. That's what we would call it. But they please the Most High every time they do it.
So right there, Captain is keeping it a buck. He letting you know that they sent Satan down here and they please the Most High every time they do it. And he said, y'all might call it something else, but we call it evil. So he's letting you know that the Most High sent Satan down here to do what? Evil. So Satan indeed is a hitman for God. Come on, man.
Okay,
you
right.
got to know this, brother.
Adam. You're
gonna let us go.
So, you snapped me again, but no. All right. So here's the thing. With all due respect to Captain Zariak, I have no beef with him, whatsoever. We had a good conversation in Philly. I disagree with the way that he framed that. And there's the thing: just because somebody makes a statement that makes the biblical worldview an easier target for you to hit, that doesn't mean I have to agree with it. You know what I'm saying? It's just so I have a different perspective, and that's okay. That black man has his perspective. I have a perspective that I believe comes from the text and is logically consistent. Now, when it comes to Brother Jabari, now notice what I said earlier, and I would invite people to play the tape back. What I said after I presented my argument, that in order to prove me wrong, you can't just shake your head and you can't just say, well, y'all got a problem too. Or God created Satan. You have to show me where I'm incorrect in my understanding. Now what I'm going to show is let me narrate for the audience, right? What Jabari has done for much of his time here, what he's done is pointed out maybe a lack of knowledge in terms of how we pronounce the word, or know a particular character in the text, or knowing when a particular document was written, and so on and so forth. He's pointed out things like that. But what he hasn't done is go to the meat of my argument and show how I'm wrong. Because at the end of the day, he agrees with me that my understanding of his theology is correct, that everything exists within the one, right? You agree with me on that. He also agrees that the second part of his statement was that we're all in this fallen state of some sort, trying to get back to some level of divinity, and maybe those who are further along are trying to point people in that direction. But nevertheless, even in that fallen state, we are still all part of emanations of expressions of the one. So therefore, here's the issue. If that is the case, then that means that all evildoers, every white colonizer, Derek Chauvin, everybody is a part of the Most High being, or the being that occupies that Most High slot in your theology. Now, actually, I've said that a couple of times. Let me clarify. Is there anything higher than the one? Like, is there anything that exists outside the one? I'm asking. That's not rhetorical. I'm asking you, Jabari. Is there anything that exists outside the one?
How could there be? It's the one.
Agreed. So would you? So if I were to use a term, the Most High, I'm not a Christian, I've heard Kemetics use the term Most High in reference to the one. Is that an incorrect usage of that phrase, or would that be a fair use of the phrase, in reference to the one, the Most High?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't use it, but that doesn't mean that it's necessarily incorrect. That's not necessarily. I mean, the Most High it tends to be a moniker that's used in Christianity. Well, there are many, many different ways that we describe the divine
So, all right. So there's no higher being than the divine, the one. Correct? Am I correct in saying that?
Ask that question again.
Well, I'm saying by definition, if everything exists within the one, there can be no higher being than the one, right?
I didn't say everything exists in the one.
Everything is a part of.
Everything is a part of the one.
Okay,
there was creation that occurred in the text that wrote vocab.
Right. Right. So you have, the noon, and then you might have a tomb, and then
differentiation in that we actually are able to understand that in fact, what has occurred is a fall away from this divine state, and that what we are all trying to do is, what we should be trying to do is to become the one. That is to return to the one. In fact, when you look at the design of the New Kingdom Kemetic Temple, you'll actually see, and Reggie says the universe is made of waves and particles. Those are just other words. Dear brother, those are just other terms. Waves and particles. When I say the one, all things, even quantum physics tells us now that there was a point where all things were one. You could even look for what is called the red shift. Reggie, if you're not familiar with the red shift. There was a point, we could even see all of the heavenly bodies are moving away from one source, one point. So in actuality, what we are talking about is the one.
Right. So again, that's my point. But
hold on. You asked me a question.
But you can't filibuster it though.
I'm explaining what you asked me.
Okay, all right.
I can stop if you want to continue.
Well, because I think here's what I'm trying to get to, because I feel like there's a point of disagreement where we're talking past each other, and I'm just trying to clarify it, right? Because earlier you said that I was implying that you were saying that therefore everything that's done is good, or everything that's done is divine.
Yes.
Right. And so that's what I'm trying to get to. And to clarify, that's not the argument that I'm making. I'm not saying that you're saying that everything that happens is divine. That's not what I'm saying. Right. What I am saying is that the one, according to you, everything is part of the one. And if some parts of it are fallen from that divinity, some parts of the one are, I guess you could say, less divine or functioning in a way that's less divine than others. Right. So there's some moral imperfection weaved into this big one that we're talking about. Right. What I'm saying is that moral imperfection, if we're going to contrast that with Christianity, we're talking about a being in whom there is no shadow of turning, like the scripture says. There is no moral imperfection. And so if you have two different worldviews, you can scratch your head if you want, just show me where I'm wrong. If you have two different worldviews,
several times.
Wait a minute. If you have two different worldviews, one in which has a morally perfect being from which to build a moral framework, the other one has a morally imperfect being, I'm saying that morally imperfect being, the one, puts us on less stable footing to build a moral framework. That's what I'm trying to say. And so it doesn't do you any good to point out whether or not the book of such and such was 1,000 years younger than I thought, or Vocab didn't know what Tefnut was. All that stuff is fine and dandy. But at the end of the day, you can't say, oh, well, you guys, Satan was created, so therefore you had the same problems. No. What you've got to do, you've got to show that in your worldview, it's not the case that the logical outworking of everything being a part of the one is that you have this morally imperfect being that is ultimately the culprit behind everything you want to blame Christianity for. The real blame falls on the one. Now, last part, you said something about Satan being created evil, such and such. And again, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. And I know that you often will say, I'll put it this way. I've often heard you say, you tout like this knowledge that you have of Christianity, but then you make fundamental mistakes that are indicators to me that you don't know as much as you claim to know. And I say that in love with all respect. So when you say things like God created Satan, and if Satan's evil, then God created evil, what you're not understanding is, if you have been studying stuff for 30 years, then you ought to be able to talk to me about the way that St. Augustine worked through these things back in like the fourth century. You know what I'm saying? That you should be aware of these things if it is the case that you're indeed as knowledgeable about the Christian worldview as you say that you are. So just like I can flex on you, just like you say, oh, well, Adam, such and such book is 1,000 years younger. I can flex on you, but like, oh, well, Jabari, this notion of evil being created was etched out and addressed by Augustine back in the fourth century when he noted, as I said earlier, that evil itself doesn't exist in and of itself. Evil is a privation of good, just like cold is a privation of heat. Darkness is a privation, the absence of light.
I got it. So the Most High was lying when he said he created God evil.
No, but he said no again. So you keep going to passages that talk about calamity,
brother.
So,
you speaking.
Wait.
I don't get what you're saying, bro. Watch this.
Watch this
right quick, Adam.
I'm gonna cut it off right here. I got you. I'm gonna cut it off right here. Watch this. What I'm saying is, if I broke into your house right now and threatened your family and you shot me, nobody would say, "Dang, man, Saw shouldn't have done that," because I was breaking in your house and threatening something. I was doing wrong.
What's the point? Everybody would know that.
The point is, you brought calamity to me, but you were justified in doing so. Likewise, when God brings calamity to nations that were doing wrong, he is morally justified in doing that because there's nothing wrong about judging evil deeds. That's what I'm trying to say. So when you read Amos 3:6, when you read Isaiah 45, those are examples of God taking action against evildoers, and he's justified in bringing calamity to them. Absolutely.
Hold up, Jabari. So Vocab, I would like to get you on the record real quick. Did God create evil, brother? Yes or no?
God ordained everything, but he works through secondary agents or secondary means.
So did God create evil? Just say it. Yes or no?
God created Satan. right? And he ordained him to be who he would be, but Satan also made his own choice.
Right, but
So
did he
God
create
is not
evil?
the
But
creator
did God
of evil,
create?
right? According to James.
You said God is not the creator of evil?
Yeah, according to James,
So
God
hold
can't.
on.
God can't.
Is there
but,
another creator who created this evil?
No.
You saying no?
No, but James says God can't, he doesn't create evil where he's not tempted with evil. But God is the primary mover, if you want to use that terminology, who creates all things and he ordains them. So God ordained that Satan would be evil, and that's a secondary meme. And I don't know, Adam may want to parse it out somewhat different, but that's what it is. But I have a concern that if we're only talking about this, Jabari doesn't have to defend things like magic spells at the judgment, because Jabari wants to talk about this. And I know you do too, Sonetta, which I respect, but Jabari has a lot of explaining to do because he wants to judge us in matters of morality. And that's where this conversation is. Well, God created evil. Adam's already shown that with this unclear, I mean, who's even really ultimately in charge in the Kemetic worldview of Jabari? And how does he have that right? And that's why when Jabari tells us to read these ancient Egyptian texts, they're not authoritative in any way. Half the time we don't know who wrote them. Half the time we got one complete copy. That book, the book you were talking about earlier, there's one complete copy and three messed up, mutilated copies. And so, you know, these aren't things that we should be really looking to as if we really know what was said all the way back then. And then Egyptians like to deface their own stuff. So you've got graffiti on the walls by fellow Egyptians. But here's the thing, Jabari. How do you defend at the final judgment people being instructed to cast spells to trick the gods? Spell 30, tell your heart to shut up. Spell 125, which we don't have the text, but we know they were instructed to use the spell. How do you, Jabari, defend people at a final judgment where their morality is supposed to be weighed against a feather, where the morality is supposed to be weighed, and one of the gods is kind of an evil god who's doing the judging? The whole thing is messed up, right? And in this course, you have people being instructed to cast magic spells to get through the judgment. Bro, this is writing the answers on your hand in a test. And Jabari has no right. He talks about an ethnic right. He has no moral right to criticize anything in the Old or New Testament because he has no moral foundation of his own. He has never once told me who is the God of ultimate truth. I asked him that a long time ago. He hasn't told us who is the God who actually establishes justice. And this God, Jabari, must be eternal. He can't sneeze himself into existence. He can't whack off in his own mouth. He has to be eternal. Otherwise, the principle is not eternal. And the thing is, you've got it all split out. You got this delegation God by committee. We have an actual one. Now, Jabari, how do you justify the use of using magic spells to try to get through an ethical judgment? Tell us, explain this. Now, here's what you're going to say. Here's what's happening.
Yeah,
you're going to tell us.
Here's what you're going to say.
Yeah, what you're gonna say is we don't understand what we're reading, and it's all symbolic, and we need to go back, and you're gonna ask us what wall it's found on, the left or the right wall, instead of really dealing with the issue, because that's what you've been doing all night. That's called obfuscation. However you say that word, that's what you're doing.
Obfuscation.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you, Adam. That's
Now, let me first say that when you both talk back to back, I have more to respond to,
Sure.
And I want you to understand that is happening, right? I want you to understand.
It has to do with length, bro, not amount of speakers. Length of time.
And then you let me respond, and then you speak through it.
Well, we have a little bit of dialogue. Is it all?
That's not a dialogue. That's you over speaking me in my answer. So let us be clear. First of all, I've read the works of St. Augustine. They are voluminous. I was forced to read them. And I don't agree with everything that he says. Simply because you say St. Augustine worked something out, I disagree with much of what I read in St. Augustine. And I want to be really clear that you are trying to say that your divine force is morally perfect. But you are ignoring what I've said. And I know the folks in the chat have heard this. Those same 10 commandments you tout come from the first time that they are described is in Deuteronomy. And when you see them in Deuteronomy, some of the other laws are that you can stone a woman who is not a virgin on her marriage bed. By the way, it doesn't say anything about the man being a virgin. It even says that you can pay for, if you get caught raping a woman, you can pay for her and then she can be your wife. 50 shekels, actually. So I want you to understand that if that is your morally perfect God, you can take him and have him. I don't want him. How do you see moral perfection when your laws are evil? They're evil. We don't even need to say the name Satan. There are many imperfections.
According to who?
In your text.
According to who?
I want you to, and once again, he's going to talk there so anyway. So, and I want you to recognize that just saying he's morally perfect, when we analyze the laws that you're describing, you cannot defend. And you also, this is very interesting, and I'm talking to Adam primarily here. He also says, well, calamity occurs when someone does something wrong. So I guess what you're really saying, because you haven't answered why a woman should be stoned to death, is that the woman did something wrong by not actually having a hymen, because that's really what the problem is, or not having her hymen bleed. And so her stoning by men in her city on the doorstep of her father, because she sought to play a whore in his house, is justified. That is calamity. You have not answered that, and you won't answer it. You know why?
I certainly will. I will answer it.
Smart. That's why you want it. Because
I'll answer it right now.
With it, you're going to be in trouble. So
I'll answer it right now.
Continue. Let me continue. I don't need you to answer it now.
Okay.
And then Vocab Malone has the nerve to say that our texts don't have any authorities because we don't know who wrote them. Now, Adam, you should just come through the screen and slap your boy in the head, because most of the texts in the Bible we don't know who were written by. You know that. They were written by committee. We have early versions that are different from later versions. So obviously someone added something. There are interpolations. I know you know this. You just don't think I know it. But the reality is I do. And if you had read my article, you would know that I did, and you wouldn't have gone there, because what you end up doing is looking really poor here.
I do have your book, by the way.
The reality is the book is not about that. But I'm glad you did. Okay. Brother, I appreciate it. But let me say to you that as we talk about this, and you talk about this morally perfect deity, there's so many things that this deity does that are certainly morally imperfect. You haven't even justified the murder of babies. I said that. You're not speaking to it because you're smart. So if your deity is morally perfect, I want you to justify the murder of babies. Babies, innocence. What, the baby did something wrong? And also the murder of women that are believed not to be virgins. And actually marrying women, being forced to marry their rapists. Now, I want to be clear. This is just that I could do so much more on that. If you've looked at me, if you've looked at stuff I've done on Sonnetter, you know that I did a 2-hour description of the problem of misogyny in the Bible.
I watched it. Mm-hmm.
So you have to know that there's a lot that is imperfect in this morally perfect divine force. This is not free will. Your divine force is saying this is what should happen. We're not talking about people doing something ill. Moses says, well, if this woman is not a virgin, you can kill her because these are the laws that I have received. That's your God saying it, unless you're saying Moses is a liar. If you say Moses is a liar, I'll leave you alone. But then you have to tell me Moses is a liar. Okay. And finally, vocab. You and these magic spells. You know that magic spells is nothing more than how people try to translate something into English. The term is usually hekau, or words of power. And you know that the Kemetic language is known as the divine words. That's what it can be translated to. So essentially what we are saying is that you have the power. If you actually have control of your divinity, your speech can actually create. And so you're saying that there are spells. I would not call them spells. I would call them affirmations. I would say that they are words of power. When you use the word magic spell, it gives it this fetishistic look. And I'm going to tell you, as someone who was raised Christian, every Sunday, and sometimes even on Wednesdays, I would go to church, and Father Nolan or Father Kavanaugh, those are their real names, Father Nolan or Father Kavanaugh would actually stand in front of the Mass, and he would have these little wafers, and he'd have a little bit of wine, and he'd do some things over them with his hands. And then the actual belief is that they are no longer wafers and wine. They are now literally the body and blood of Christ. And you have the nerve to say that we have magic spells when every week I saw Father Nolan and Father Kavanaugh do what can only be called magic. But
we're not Catholics. Jabari, which magic spell, when you go to the judgment hall?
I'm not finished.
Well, you've been going for a while, my friend.
Yes,
when you go to the judgment hall, which magic spell are you going to use?
I have to respond to both of you. So I'm going to go a little bit longer. You need to write some notes, as I have been doing, so that I don't interrupt you, just as you should not be interrupting me. Okay. And so what I want you to understand is that saying something that sounds funny when you translate it in English, it actually betrays you. You don't actually, it means that you haven't read the other sources. So when I keep saying, do you know this book? Do you know that? What I'm trying to get to you is the fact that you know so little about the tradition that I'm in. This is the origin of our conflict that occurred on, what was it, January 17th, 2019. And I was politely saying to you, listen, why did you get someone that doesn't know the tradition? I'll come on and talk to you. But obviously you ran, so now you're getting a spanking. The reality is that you know nothing of the Kemetic tradition. And Vocab, I want you to come back on Sound Editor's channel in a week and show us proof of retainer sacrifice, people actually throwing their servants under the pyramid. I want you to listen to what he said. Because when he doesn't come back, you should know that his ignorance has betrayed him. Finally, this is not about ethnic people not talking about people of other ethnic groups. That's not what this is. You tried to oversimplify that. It's been boiled down to the point where I think you're trying to argue something that I am not arguing. What I am saying is, as someone of European descent, recognizing what was done to people of African descent, spiritually, what was done to us physically, morally, as we attempt to return to our ancient traditions, you should just stay out of it. And if you knew yourself better, you would say, you know what? I may not agree, but I got to stay out of it. This is not the same thing as me critiquing Odin, which I haven't really done, but it's not the same thing as me critiquing the Druids, which I haven't done, but it's not the same thing. This is about a European dude, a Tom Who dude, a white dude making fun of ancient African traditions. That's what this is. And having the nerve to call them new and strange. That's why you're here, getting this spanking. Let's not get away from that. And so there are several things. You have assignments, both of you. And I'd like, as you respond, to answer those assignments. For Adam, I'm going to recap because Adam looked like, really? I had an assignment?
No, I'm writing it down. I get
you know what I asked you to answer? Because you're not answering any of what I've asked you to answer. And when I answer what you've answered, you say I haven't answered it.
Yeah,
I'm not getting it. I mean, you said that this is a morally perfect deity. And we've said, well, if he creates Satan, how can he perfect? Well, look at these laws that come from the divine. Is this something that you would justify? Does that mean he's in fact moral? And you have intimated free will in your tradition. That's an acceptable answer. But I'm just saying to you that there's free will in the Kemetic tradition as well. That's what I'm trying to explain to you. And I know you heard me. I know you heard me. So I really want you to answer those difficult questions. And I will talk more about the affirmations, if you like, Vocab, in the next round. If you like, I can.
Which one are you going to use when you go to the judgment hall? Which magic spell, Jabari?
I'm going to use one that makes Europeans be quiet.
What would that be? Why would you have to do that for your jackal-headed god?
Second, you know that's funny.
Why would your jackal-headed god care about that?
Adam's laughing. Come on, brother.
Hey, Jabari, which spell are you going to use to get out of the fact that you've stolen and lied? Which one's going to get you past your gods? That's Jabari, which magic spell are you going to use to tell your heart not to tell on you when you stand before the jackal-headed God who weighs your heart?
Ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. Your Kemetic tradition is ridiculous.
I should ask you
which spell. Notice, Jabari, you can't answer a simple question.
Then
which magic spell are you going to use to get by the jackal-headed God as he weighs your heart?
I do not use magic spells. They're affirmations.
But the translators call them spells.
I don't agree with magic magic spells. I don't.
Okay, you don't have to say magic then. Which spell are you going to cast upon your heart?
The word is hekau.
Which spell?
On hekau, I'll talk to you about it. But if
It's funny, you didn't like Adam going with the translators for calamity, but you don't like budging them when they say spell. Jabari over budge. Which spell are you going to use to trick your heart into not telling on you the fact that you have lusted after a woman, you have stolen, and you have lied? Which one?
I'm saying to you, first of all, that's not what it says. You're just putting that in there.
It's to tell your heart to not tell on you.
That is not what it says. So you're
what does it say then?
Because once again, you're Beavis and Butthead.
What does the spell say?
Say what it says.
What does the spell say?
Little stuff in there that's not there.
What does the spell say?
Do that.
What does the spell say?
Listen, I'm not trying to hang around your neck pedophilia of Christian priests, and not just Catholic priests, by the way, because that has nothing to do with you. And that would be ridiculous. I'm not trying to just be sensational here. And as you say, which magic spell? I've already said to you, that text does not say magic spell. That's a translation. It doesn't even say magic.
So you don't believe in magic?
What I am saying to you is that is an affirmation. And that if you are divine and you have actually come into your divine abilities, your word shall create.
Okay, Jabari, what have you created through your word?
I'm working every day to create through my word.
What have you created through your word?
I am working every day to say that what I am doing in my life, I say, I will do this, and it happens. And that is what I attempt to do. I try to create through my word. But I, too, even as a Kemetic priest, am trying to return to my divinity. I'm not perfect. I'm not suggesting that I am.
None of us are. I understand that. But you know what I liked about your answer, brother?
And I'm going to say to you, when my heart is weighed, there's probably going to be a lot of stuff there that I would not like to be seen.
I appreciate that. No, I totally respect what you're saying. Now, within that, notice how the model that you're trying to model after is to speak something and then it comes to be. You are modeling yourself after our God, Yahweh. It says, let there be, hold on. Just let me be, which is, let there be light, and there was. You're not modeling yourself after the Beavis and Butthead God from your own text that we talked about earlier, who is turned on by his shadow, whatever term you would like to use there, and then masturbates other gods into existence by putting the semen into his mouth and then dropping it out, and then they are formed. No, I'm not even trying to be funny. I'm saying what you're saying, but you see what I'm saying, Jabari? In all seriousness, you're modeling yourself after the way God operates, not the way your false gods operate. They don't say "let there be" and there is, brother, because they don't have that power. Now they sneeze themselves into existence on accident.
Now listen.
But do you see what I'm saying, brother? That's a good point. Come on now.
Number one, speaking and into existence is exactly what they're trying to say. The seed is the creative source of things. And so when he says he takes his seed into his mouth and he emanates it, he is actually saying an earlier version of what you have said. And I want to go further. The idea that they'll speak and there'll be light, that is on the text I asked you to read. You have to read it so you can see that it comes forward thousands of years before the one you're describing. I'm not modeling after Yahweh. Yahweh is a copycat, and a poor one at that. You have to read the text. That's why I keep telling you, do you know this text? Do you know this text? If you had read more of the text, you would recognize the imprint when you read your own text. And you would recognize that biblical scholars have corrected mistranslations in your text by reading some Kemetic text. That's a fact.
Who's read more Egyptian texts here today? You or I, Jabari?
Are you crazy?
I've read way more Egyptian texts than you. You haven't read a single primary source. You just ask us if it's on the north or south wall.
No. I read you from the Maxims of Ptah-hotep. You weren't reading Kemetic texts. You were reading people who were talking about something else. When you talk about retainer sacrifice, that wasn't in a Kemetic text. You haven't read more Kemetic texts than I have.
No, I didn't say that. No, Jabari, I would never say that. That's not what I was saying.
I'm talking about tonight. You haven't been speaking more Kemetic.
Oh, yeah, no, tonight I certainly have read more primary sources to you.
No, you have not.
Okay.
That's not a primary. Do you know what a primary source is? Adam, tell them what a primary source. That's not a primary source.
We know what a primary source is.
I'm waiting for my response. I'm gonna let y'all work that out. I'm waiting for mine.
Article about something. That's not a primary source. You're not reading primary sources. I'm the one that read from the primary source. And then when you tried to talk about a spell, you stuck stuff in there that's not in there. And I told you shouldn't do that. So you're not even reading the primary source correctly. And I have quoted the Bible. I've quoted several Kemetic texts, and you have not honestly quoted a Kemetic text yet. And what you have done is you have let your ignorance betray you. You don't know the text. You're reading what someone else said. You're reading what someone else said. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But if you're going to be a scholar, you have to read the source. That's what you have to do. I've cited biblical texts. I haven't always given you the actual verse. But as I look at Adam's eyes, I can tell that he recognizes that I'm actually quoting something because his eyes open a little bit. He knows I'm quoting. When I talked about stoning a woman because she sought to play a whore and her father, look at him nod. I've been quoting biblical text.
Write it down so I can respond to it. Yeah, good.
I've been citing biblical text and Kemetic text. The only thing you cited was a spell, as you called it, and you stuck some stuff in there that's not there.
All right.
And then you read, there's the other thing, I'll give you credit for this. You also read part of a creation story, and you stuck other things in there. You didn't just read it and then give your description. You have to read it and then say, this is the analysis. You're sticking things in there for shock value and laughs. And it's not even funny. No one's laughing. You're just showing how ignorant you are. And I don't mean disrespectfully. I mean, let me say it another way because it sounds foul. You're showing that you haven't read the text properly. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. And I'm willing to do that with you. But you have to be honest about wanting to hear it. You have to be.
I can only read so much polytheistic fan fiction porn in one day, brother.
You see, he's doing it again.
Come on, look, Jabari. Now here's the thing. In all seriousness, you were making jokes plenty. You know, what if I said I was gonna cite a spell like you did to make people shut up? You know, but see, they're saying turnabout's fair play.
Here's the difference.
Come on now.
Here's the difference. This is what I'm trying to say. This is what I'm trying to say. The difference is you just intimated that you read more primary text tonight.
No, tonight, yes.
Than I did. I'm saying to you that you haven't read any primary text really.
What did you actually read? Remember the book you said was the oldest book? What did you actually read from it?
When two cultures collide, which one will stand to liberate the black community?
Twice, and you didn't listen. I mentioned the name of it twice.
No, I know.
So how come you're asking me what it is now?
No. What I'm saying is, what did you read from it?
When two cultures collide, which one will stand to liberate the black community?
What I'm saying is this. I have read to you from, and I'm going to give it to you again, the Maxims of Ptah-hotep, and I've even read to you from the Instructions of Amenemop. I didn't tell you that I was reading that, but I can. I'll tell you what I cited that is a direct quote, right? But I read directly from the book. You saw me pick up a book and read to you from the Maxims of Ptah-hotep. And what you have done instead is you insert your critical statements in something. So then what it does is it manipulates and it destroys the text that you're supposed to be reading. At least read the text and then give us your analysis. But instead what you're doing is you're trying to make jokes reading the text. There's nothing wrong with jokes. What I'm saying is that the places that you're making jokes means that you don't understand what you're reading. That's what I'm saying to you. That's what I'm saying to you. And I've given you the name of text several times, and you still just ask me what it is.
No. That's not what I was asking you. I was asking you what you had read directly from it. But I feel like we're getting bogged down in this. If you feel you've read more, that's fine. Okay. That's fine. I think the idea was just to see, have we looked at anything tonight from your sources? And that's what we're getting at. But I want to make sure Adam is able to say what he wants to say, because I feel like we're going to keep on going around with that. Jabari.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, appreciate it. So here's the thing, when it comes to, again, I want to, tackle this. And you can let me know if I missed something. You gave me a homework assignment. You know what I'm saying? I want to make sure I capture it all. So, first of all, I do want to say that you've continually said that I haven't answered this, I haven't responded to that, and I just want to throw it out there. I'm gonna get to it, but I just want to make a note for the audience that you still haven't responded by showing me, as I'm throwing out your worldview and following the breadcrumbs, so to speak, in terms of where it leads logically. You haven't shown where I'm wrong in terms of the logical conclusions of your worldview. I'm saying that the logical conclusion of everything existed within the one, the logical conclusion is that therefore you have a morally flawed being that we just can't build a moral framework on. You haven't shown me where my logic is wrong. So when we come back, I want you to show me where I'm missing it, according to you, where I'm getting it wrong. Now, with that being said, I don't want to see a book. I mean, that's cool. I mean, I'll read it. If you text me.
It's what I cited.
As far as the free will?
Yes.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I know you cited the free will. Now, here's the problem. The problem is when it comes to a biblical perspective, I'll just say in the Christian worldview, right? If you have agents that have a will, I'm framing it that way specifically for a reason. If you have agents who have a will that are independent of God, meaning they can do this or do that, either align or not align with God's nature, so on and so forth, they can use their will to do right or wrong, and then a morally perfect God can judge them based upon their actions. The difference between my system and your system is that regardless of how individuals use their free will, either way, the outworkings of their free will is an expression of the one. Therefore, the outworking, leads to their being this morally imperfect being. So, in other words, if I was a part of God and I did something wrong, then me being a part of God, that wrong that'd be God doing wrong. You see what I'm saying? That's how your worldview works. That's not how the Christian worldview works. But maybe we'll come back to that. I want to answer the questions that you threw out at, because you swear I'm not answering them. So let me make sure I do that. Now, first of all, I'm going to admittedly put myself at a disadvantage, because when we're talking about what's called philosophers call the problem of evil, it's a huge topic that people have written books upon books upon books on. So I can't give like a full answer that will be, I'll just say, philosophically satisfying. I'll just put it that way. But I'm just going to throw it out there, and I'm going to give people a resource where they can look at it further. All right. Number one, when it comes to you talked about the passage where if a rapist, rapes a woman, and then she can buy that woman, or he can buy that woman for a wife. You know what I'm saying? Now, again, you've accused Vocab of not handling the Kemetic text rightly. You know what I'm saying? Of citing things, either reading them out of context or just mishandling them one way or the other. When you cite that passage as being some sort of example of like some moral shortcoming of God, I'm seeing the same thing in the argument you're presenting in this specific sense. When you have somebody who let's just say back in the day, we're talking about, back when ancient Israel, blah, blah, blah. I'm saying if somebody is raping a woman, I'm saying, and now she's at a disadvantage where she can't go freely marry somebody else, that's jacked up, where this dude gets off scot-free. You know what I'm saying? So obviously, in order to address that, you don't have this dude getting scot-free for raping a chick. No, now you have to take the responsibility. There's a cost here. You had to take the responsibility, and you have to bring her into your household. You can't just rape her and then cast her to the wolves. You can't do that. No, you laid down with her. Now she's your wife. That's exactly what it is. Now, in a culture where you have dowries, then all the customaries that go along with it. That's not anything different than what you would see in the ancient Near East. You can laugh, but wait, don't laugh yet, because there's going to be a bomb at the end. All right, so just hold the laughter for a second. At the end of the day, you can't get off scot-free for raping the chick. You know what I'm saying? If you rape somebody, you can't just throw her out and be like, all right, I did what I wanted with you, get out in the street and that's it. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't work that way. Number one. Number two, when you're talking about the murdering of women and stoning women for adultery. First of all, adultery, it's not just women, bro. I'm saying, like, if you handle the scriptures rightly, adultery is a sin, period. So if you're a male or female, then the repercussions for that sin under the Mosaic law was death. That's what it was. Now we can stay on the women because I know you want to harp on the whole misogyny thing. So I'm just going to the teeth of your argument for the sake of making it spicy. When it comes to the murder of women, or the quote murder of women, bro, there's repercussions for sin. And under the Mosaic law, that's what the repercussions were. It wasn't somebody just indiscriminately going along, just stoning women for no reason. There were repercussions for the law. That's what that is. Hold that thought, because I'm going to tie it together. I'm going to get to, I'm going to camp out here and make this point. What does it say? I'm going to pull a Jabari right quick. What does it say in Matthew chapter 19, verse 8? What does it say there? I'm going to pull a Jabari right quick.
I'll pull it up. You want me to?
No, don't pull it up, brother. Why you gotta read it? You can't. I can see it in your glasses, man. Why are you researching it?
No. I never asked you for a particular verse. I said, with the darn book. I've read the book of Matthew.
My point is,
memorized all.
But you can say this for 30 years, though.
Stop.
You can't crucify us for not knowing the passages you don't know, right?
Can you agree with something? Can you agree with something?
Come on, man. I can laugh. You can laugh, right?
I want to see if you would agree with this, though. There's a difference between remembering an exact chapter and verse and never read the book at all. Isn't there a difference?
Well, bro, you asked me what year was something was written.
Is
man.
there not
Come on, dog. Come on, man. Come on, dog.
What year? I said what period?
Bro, it's like 6,000 years.
You could have just said somewhere in 300 or all right.
For the sake of time, let me read it. This is Matthew chapter 19. Let's go to verse 8. This is the NIV. It said, Jesus replied, Moses permitted you to divorce your wives because your hearts were hard, but it was not this way from the beginning. I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife, except for sexual immorality, and marries another commits adultery. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna read verse 8 again. Jesus replied, Moses permitted you to divorce your wives because your hearts were hard, but it was not that way from the beginning. So what are we saying in Jesus' words? What we're saying is that not all laws that are from laws of Moses are a reflection of his ultimate moral nature and will. You have some laws that were given that are a reflection of the hardness of heart of man. And so you can't make a straight line connection from the law says this, therefore God that. I'm saying you have to be more textured than that. And somebody who's been studying this for 30 years, I would expect to have figured that out. But nevertheless, what you do have, and I'm going to give you the biblical perspective. And like I said, I'm going to give you a source because I can't go into it much further. What you do see is that we have a fallen world. We live in a fallen world, just similar to what you described in terms of that fallen from divinity. At the end of the day, mankind has fallen from grace, if you will. We've fallen from the place that we're supposed to be. And, God has had a salvific plan from day one to bring creation to where it's supposed to be. But along the way, we have really stubborn people who have hardness of hearts. And in some cases, there are jagged edge responses to that brokenness. That's just a fact of the matter. But fortunately, in the biblical worldview, we're not left with that. In your worldview, there is no getting around evil because evil is a part of the one. In your worldview, creation and all of existence is left with a stain of evil and is not going away. From the biblical perspective, okay, you can laugh, but from the biblical perspective,
I can't smile. I disagree with you, so I'm smiling.
Okay, all right. Well, at the end of the day, at the very foundation of existence in your worldview, evil is there. I'm saying, and it's been there for however long. And in my worldview, even though it is the case that we live in a broken world, it's not the case I will always be stained with evil forever. I'm saying because Jesus Christ, came to be the propitiation for sin. God sent a savior that anybody who by grace through faith comes to him and says, Jesus is Lord, and so on and so forth, repent of your sins, you can be saved and ultimately freed from the bondage of sin and evil. That reprieve from evil is not available to the Kemetic because at the end of the day, regardless of what you do or how high or low you get on the divinity scale, the ultimate reality is infused with sin and evil. Sin doesn't win on the biblical perspective. In Kemet, it absolutely does. And so, again, I want to come back to that's the gospel of Nasha. I want to make sure I didn't miss something you said. And I'm going to refer people to a book called, it's called Is God a Moral Monster by Paul Copan. It's a rhetorical question. Is God a Moral Monster by Paul Copan, where he gets into more depth about the kinds of passages, these difficult passages that Jabari is bringing up. By the way, it's very odd that you're bringing up some of these passages. You seem to think that there's like this one-to-one correlation. Okay, well, like do this and then do that. Whereas, I'm assuming you've read, studies where, scholars discuss the Mosaic law as being like case law. You're saying where it's not like this didactic, okay, well, this happened, so you got to just murk everybody. Like there's case law involved. But you seem to have a really flat understanding of how the Mosaic law works. I'm just going to leave that there. Y'all can check out Is God a Moral Monster for more on that. You talked about murdering of babies, and so I'm not sure. Are you referring to like some of the wars and stuff like that? Is that what you were referencing? I'm assuming. I just want to make sure I'm responding correctly. Is that what you're referring to?
Actually, I'm saying that it happened several times, but specifically when we talk about the firstborn child in Egypt, not something that happened in history, by the way, a mythological story. You were actually saying,
according to you, right? Okay.
No, according to most biblical scholars now, not according to Jabari.
Most biblical scholars, okay.
Don't make me read the scholars. Please don't make me do that to you.
All right.
It's too late for us to do that.
Let's stick with what were you referring to? You're talking about the plagues? Is that what you're talking about? Or?
I'm talking about there are several times that your God kills babies. But let's just stick with the time that he killed the firstborn child.
Right. So unfortunately, and I think you can actually appreciate this, unfortunately, here in the Western world, we are inheritance of the Enlightenment period, the European Enlightenment period. Okay. So people can go research that. But a part of European Enlightenment thinking is a high emphasis on individuality. Whereas the biblical text, and even your text, I would say, written being that it's from the ancient Near East, is not written from a modern, Western, heavily leaning individualistic framework. And it's not to say that individuals aren't valued. I think that the individual and the collective are held in a complementary way. I said that to say this: when we look at ancient Near Eastern passages, including in the Bible, it is the case, that sometimes there's what's called collective judgment. That's a very real thing. I'm saying now it's super strange to us over here because we feel like, well, dang, I ain't do this or I ain't do that, so I must not be, how can I be held accountable? But from a biblical perspective, we are all, reared in sin. For anybody who has sinned, then judgment is waiting at the door for you anyway. That's number one. Or if you have a situation where somebody who's now granted, I'll be fair and say, different theologians disagree on this, but I happen to be of the belief that if you haven't sinned, then you are admitted into the fellowship of God for eternity. And so you have a God who's dealing with, I would say, like whether it be the Amalekites who are, murking babies, for worship, or whether it be whomever. I think you do have God passing judgment on communities, for collective sin, such that it stops further generations from entering into that same sin, which ultimately curtails evil rather than having it, go on perpetually without anybody checking it. Now, in order for you to say that there's a problem with that, here's what you would have to do. You would have to show me what's the moral standard by which you're adjudicating what's wrong with what I just said. And you're going to have to show me within the Kemetic framework how you can have a firm sense of morality from which you can make that judgment. I'm saying you can't do that because ultimately, whatever you want to say about what God did, or so-and-so did in the Bible, at the end of the day, on your theology, the one did it. And so you don't have the moral framework from which you can make that assessment. But if you would like to, I would invite you to do that. So, take your best shot.
I want to bullet point this again because Adam.
You be skewing my words when you bullet point though. You be leaving stuff out, man. Come on, bro.
Wonderfully.
Come on, man.
But I want you to know, family, that Adam justified the murder of women that were not virgins.
No, I did not. I did not.
He said you have to understand it in the context.
That's what happens when you bullet point me. What you do is you skew my words.
Now you don't get to just speak now because I was silent.
That's Floyd Mayweather stuff, though. I understand why you're the Floyd Mayweather of consciousness. I understand now.
Now you write notes.
Huh?
I wrote notes to respond to you.
But how do you write notes and regularly misconstrue what I say? I don't understand that.
You said that I have to understand the murder of babies, understand the rape of women and being married to their rapist, and understand the murder of women who are not virgins in the context of the society.
That's not what I said.
And I am saying to you that there is no way to understand that it is reprehensible.
Okay, fine.
I guarantee you that if you were...
On what basis?
Are you speaking now or am I speaking? Because I think I'm speaking now.
You can speak, but please stop missing my words, though.
I'm talking. Essentially, what you are doing is you are justifying the unjustifiable. And I really feel sorry for those who feel that they can. One of the ways you tried to justify it is you said, well, you have to understand this is almost like case law. And when Jesus comes forward, some of that stuff that they were doing isn't really relevant. I've heard that argument because Jesus is creating a new covenant. I've heard that argument. In fact, I think it's an interesting argument. But the thing that I struggle with is that if things are different from what we see in Deuteronomy, as we look at those laws and things are different now, then why does everyone still give you the entire book and say it's the word of God? If it takes that kind of knowledge to understand what is right and wrong, and in there is the murder of women who are not virgins, the murder of babies, marrying women to their rapist, I think that there should be something, an exposition that is absolutely clear. It should not have to take someone as intelligent as Adam to be able to explain it away.
Well, thanks for calling me intelligent, but you still misconstruing my words, though. But thank you.
I think you are intelligent. I think that you're misleading people and maybe a little bit so biased that you're not able to see what you're saying. That's my opinion of you. But I'm not questioning your intelligence or anything like that. I think that you're so biased that you must justify that which is unjustifiable. So here it is. You say if you rape someone, you can't get off scot-free. I agree that if you rape someone, you shouldn't get off scot-free. But remember the lady whose hymen was broken? She was literally killed. How about you say if you rape someone, you should be killed? You see how easy this one is? Instead of being murdered by the women in your city who said you had the nerve to rape a woman, you get to just have another wife. I mean, this is the actual height of misogyny. And you also
this is somebody taking in. Come on, bro.
I'm not finished. And then you say, adultery is also a major sin for men too.
Absolutely.
And I'm not saying that adultery is excused entirely in the Bible. That's not true. I've not said that. What I am saying is that when we hear women literally being murdered, it's not even for adultery. They're murdered. We have women who are the daughters of priests who are burned with fire. Did you see him blink? He knew I was quoting something.
No, I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, so I'll show you. You want me to show it to you? Do you need me to do that to you? Please.
Well, what I would like for you to do is stop being like cherry picking. That's what I want you to do.
Please don't make me do that to you,
bro. You know what I want you to do? I want you to quote me rightly. That's what I want you to do. I want you to quote me.
Sonetta, are you there? Because I'm gonna show the law. Okay, here we go. Take a look. And the daughter of any priest, if she profane herself by playing the whore, she profaneth her father and shall be burnt with fire. It's in two different places. It's in Leviticus 21:9 and Genesis 38:24.
Okay.
And you go further down into Deuteronomy 22:21, and it says this is not about burning the priest's daughter. This is about stoning women. Okay.
So the penalty for sin is death.
Adam, write your notes.
Come on, bro. Okay. I mean,
then they shall bring out the damsel to the door of her father's house, and the men of her city shall stone her with stones that she die, because she hath wrought folly in Israel to play the whore in her father's house. So shalt thou put evil away from among you. Now let's be clear. If the man is not a virgin, there is nothing that says that he should be murdered. In fact, if a man rapes a woman, there's nothing that says that he should be murdered. In fact, what happens is he ends up having another wife. He has to pay the father. Why does he have to pay the father? Because the daughter is the father's property. In actuality, this is all misogyny. And if adultery is so bad that men must be murdered for doing something equal, just show us a source, Adam. Don't pontificate. I need a source, brother. Show us I'm showing you your sources from your book. Let's go further. You say that some of these laws are because there was a hardness of heart. And so, in other words, maybe the laws were different before Jesus came forward.
That's not what I said. God dang, man. That's not what I said at all, bro. God dang, man.
Write your note. I must say again that if Jesus clarifies all of this, first of all, I really wish Jesus would be really clear about all of these things that need to be tended to with Moses' law that he gets directly from Yahweh. But I also wish that Jesus would have just said, maybe when they rolled away the stone, I need to say this before I go away. Moses was a liar. And then we would not be having this. You wouldn't be bloodied about the face and head with your own text. But that's exactly what's happening.
I'm not. No, it's really not.
I think it's really disingenuous when people, in fact, say, well, what should actually happen is that now that Jesus came, all of that is irrelevant, when I know that you, probably Vocab and Adam, have given both the New Testament and the Old Testament to people. If it's not clear, and I'm telling you that what you are describing is not really in the text, but if it was that clear, then at least you should explain it to them in the text. And let's go further. Why didn't Jesus explain, hey, you know what? We're not going to do that. How about the fact that women must suffer men to teach? They have to be silent when men are there. Brother, you have to acknowledge that misogyny is exactly what the Christian tradition has embraced heavily.
False.
And stop saying that it's in the Near East. First of all, the term Near East is such a ridiculously racist word.
We never said this. Right? You're literally just throwing stuff up against the wall.
The reason why they describe things as Near East and Far East is because basically the European Empire tried to describe the rest of the world as if they were in the center. Let's stop using those terms.
It's a red herring.
As an African, I am not finished. As an African, you should do better. And recognize, you could call it at least Northeast Africa. That's better than saying the Near East. When we talk about the Near East and the Far East, those terms only exist if Europe is in the center of the world.
Would you agree that that's irrelevant to my argument, though? Would you agree with that?
Would I agree with what?
Would you agree that the point you're making is completely irrelevant to the argument that I've made? Would you agree with that?
No, what I'm trying to say is that we have to center ourselves again, Adam. And what I'm suggesting is that you are not centering yourself, that you have absolutely found yourself completely chained by a tradition that was given to you in chains. And we have to recenter ourselves according to African traditions once more. As long as we continue to deal with the greatest purveyor of white supremacy, Christianity. Christianity is the greatest purveyor of white supremacy.
What chains did Augustine have?
I want to absolutely
Cyprian, Tertullian.
I really wish that I could talk about
what chains did they have?
By the
Origin,
Athanasius,
Shenouda the Great. What chains did they have? They received Christianity chains. Which one?
I want to be clear.
Okay.
That there are some that argue that Augustine was ethnically African. I even argue that.
Okay.
And so that's why you've mentioned his name. The audience may not know that's why you mentioned his name, but I think it's fair that they should know why you mentioned him, because that's a good argument, Adam.
Well, yeah, if you say that my ancestors received it in chains.
That's the fun part. I want us to be able to have fun on that level. But I will say to you that as long as those people are still destroying the traditions of ancient Africa, then I would think that he's perhaps just as confused as respectfully I think you might be.
So the only people who have their wherewithal about him are people that agree with you. Like, all these Africans. No. Seriously, let me just say this real quick. Hey, listen.
African traditions, and that Europeans can do what they want.
Augustine referred to himself as an African, by the way. But let me just say this.
Here's
the thing, though.
Everybody, I might have to open up for questions.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
A couple of questions.
And by the way, can I say something that that it is after 2 a.m. in New York.
Okay, I know that. So
we have
to open up questions right now. Take
can I respond?
Five or six or whatever.
Can I respond to what you just said, or
yes?
No?
Go ahead, Adam.
So what I'm trying to say is this: I'm saying, how is it that we hear all this stuff about how great Kemet was, how great Africans were, so on and so forth, but when we have our African ancestors who, by their own will, chose to adopt Christianity, all of a sudden they're just whitewashed and dumb.
By their own will.
Absolutely. No, before we go there, no. Let me finish. Before we go there, because at the same time, y'all call Christianity the white man's religion. At the same time, if you look at some of y'all heavyweights, they cite Helen Blavatsky, who was white. They cite Gerald Massey, who was white. They'll cite Wallace Budd, who's translated your text. He's white. Leo Frobenius, he's white. So y'all got all these white scholars from the 19th century who your heavyweights cite. And then all of a sudden, we're the ones that have the white man's religion? Please. That's why we're talking about a new and strange religion, because you guys preach stuff that is like literally unrecognizable to an ancient African. You guys teach stuff that come from Helen Blavatsky, who was a Satanist, or whatever, how she defined herself, but certainly not, informed by African traditions. And y'all swear that we're the ones coming with the white man's religion. That's so disingenuous. It's not even funny.